Chapter 647. The mermaid princess saw through Jiang Fan's honey trap, and her eyes were full of smugness and playfulness. Which idiot came up with this plan? Jiang Fan almost spat out a mouthful of blood, and he cursed Xiao Feng 1,000 times in his heart. Before leaving, Xiao Feng was certain that Jiang Fan had a high chance of winning the mermaid princess's heart with his 10,000 ancient races bloodline. Hee, Xiao Feng. There was a hint of slyness on the beautiful face of the mermaid princess that could cause the downfall of nations and the people. How did you know? Jiang Fan exclaimed. How did this mermaid princess know about Xiao Feng? Could it be? Jiang Fan's heart thumped. He thought of a possibility. Could it be that Xiao Feng and the mermaid princess had been working together? If this was true, then everything made sense. Otherwise, the mermaid princess wouldn't have seen through his honey trap the moment they met. Xiao Feng. Jiang Fan clenched his teeth as an unknown rage spread in his heart. When the surface of Jiang Fan's body was covered with a layer of dark, ancient patterns. His skin was like scales and shells, hard and thick, like a giant beast standing proudly in the wilderness. Crack. Jiang Fan's arms shook and the 10,000 ancient races bloodline in his body exploded, breaking the chains that were binding him. As expected of the 10,000 ancient races bloodline. The mermaid princess, who had reached the great origin core realm, felt a pressure from her bloodline and soul, and her body trembled instinctively. That feeling was like a tiny fish facing a primordial sea beast. I'll take you down first. Jiang Fan raised his hand and grabbed toward the mermaid princess. However, the mermaid princess seemed to know what he was going to do, and she waved her tail before Jiang Fan could make a move. So, in the deep blue water, the mermaid princess easily dodged Jiang Fan's swift and fierce grab. Where do you think you're going? Jiang Fan panicked as he leapt toward the mermaid princess. With his 10,000 ancient races bloodline, even though the mermaid princess was at the middle stage great origin core realm, she wouldn't be able to fight him head-on. However, he had neglected one factor, and that was the environment. This was the mermaid kingdom, the mermaid tribe under the lake. In the water, his speed was greatly restricted. Moreover, Jiang Fan's bloodline specialized in strength and defense. Hee, you can't hit me. Help. The mermaid princess was eccentric and quick-witted. As the princess of the mermaid race, she was used to these waters. In the purple smoke lake, she had the advantage of speed and movement techniques. Even the 10 geniuses of the sacred grounds couldn't compare to him in terms of speed and agility. Oh no! Jiang Fan despaired. He had already sensed that the mermaid clan's experts were rushing over. Run! Seeing that he couldn't do anything to the mermaid princess, Jiang Fan flew away. Pop! The mermaid princess pushed out with her slender hand, and a layer of dark blue sword ripples shot towards Jiang Fan. The attack was unobstructed in the water. Puchi! A bloodstain as thick as a needle was left on Jiang Fan's scale-like skin, but it quickly healed. What a powerful defense! The mermaid princess was slightly dazed. Her all-out attack was unable to pose any real threat to Jiang Fan. Xiao Feng! You've tricked me so badly. I'm going to cut you into 1,000 pieces. Jiang Fan cursed at Xiao Feng as he ran. Xiao Feng! The idiot who came up with the honey trap. The mermaid princess was slightly surprised, but she seemed to be slightly interested. That Xiao Feng wasn't simple to be able to order around the owner of the 10,000 ancient races bloodline. Jiang Fan felt that something was wrong. How did the mermaid princess know what he was thinking? Mind reading? A murmur sounded in his ears. Idiot. The mermaid royal family has the ability to read minds, especially the mermaid princess of every generation. The mermaid princess said proudly. Mind reading. Jiang Fan's heart jumped. Why wasn't there any information about this? If that was the case. How did the genius of the sacred land win the mermaid princess' heart? That genius only succeeded because of his heart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to win the mermaid princess' heart. The mockery on the mermaid princess' face became even thicker. So that's how it is. The voice didn't seem to have anything to do with the flow of water, and it sounded in the soul dimension. Who's there? The mermaid princess' body froze, and she finally realized that there was a third voice. At the same moment, Jiang Fan looked to the side of his head and was shocked. The mermaid princess instinctively raised her head. A transparent blue eye appeared in the water, and it looked down coldly, as if it had become one with the water. Zhao Feng. Jiang Fan felt like he was choking. That voice and the eyes in front of him were all Zhao Feng's characteristics. Dark Heart Seal. A mocking light appeared in the eye of nothingness, and a forbidden coldness shot toward the mermaid princess. Not good. The mermaid princess waved her tail and struggled. Being the mermaid princess, her soul talent was extremely high, and she was born with the ability to read minds. Even though Zhao Feng's dark heart seal was strengthened by the Eye of Heaven, it still faced great resistance against the mermaid princess. If she struggled too much, the process of using the dark heart seal would cause the mermaid princess' soul to crumble, and that would exceed Zhao Feng's original goal. This Zhao Feng has a terrifying soul elemental eye bloodline. He's actually able to use a soul eye bloodline technique on me. The mermaid princess felt the difference in their soul Dao. In terms of soul talent, the mysterious human was only stronger than her. Princess! Save the princess! Cries for help came from the surroundings. A small number of sovereign lord-level mermaids had even gotten close. What are you waiting for? Zhao Feng's voice sounded in the soul dimension. Jiang Fan panicked, and his figure flashed toward the mermaid princess and grabbed her by the throat. Let go of the princess. The mermaid experts stopped in their tracks and glared at Jiang Fan. The mermaid princess felt like she was suffocating when Jiang Fan grabbed her by the throat, and she started to struggle less. A breath or two later, the mermaid princess stopped struggling, and respect and submission appeared in her eyes. Jiang Fan was extremely familiar with this change in expression. Shua! The Eye of Heaven above his head disappeared. Don't go. Jiang Fan felt uneasy. However, the next instant, the mermaid princess roared coldly, "Everyone, retreat!" Princess! The experts of the mermaid race who had rushed over were confused. However, the princess was in the hands of the enemy, and it was the princess' own order. They didn't dare to disobey. Under the mermaid princess' order, everyone spread out and made a path. I'll kill myself if anyone tries to stop me. A dagger appeared in the mermaid princess' hand, and her expression was numb. The hearts of the mermaid experts went cold, and no one dared to stop her. Jiang Fan was overjoyed, and he left the mermaid princess' palace without any obstruction. Hurry and report to the king. The experts of the mermaid race started to talk. One of the half-step void god realms could already tell that the mermaid princess was being controlled. At this moment, the mermaid princess was like a puppet under someone's control. At the same instant, in a certain corner of the mermaid kingdom, Zhao Feng, what's the situation like? Chen Yilin had an urgent expression, and he couldn't hide the worry in his eyes. Did Junior Marshal Brother Zhang's honey trap work? Everyone felt that the mermaid kingdom was in chaos, and the auras of the upper echelon experts made them feel uneasy. Hee, who said I used a honey trap? The mermaid princess has been successfully kidnapped. Zhao Feng smiled lightly. Kidnapped the mermaid princess? The hearts of the core disciples present shook, and they couldn't help but take in a cold breath. This Zhao Feng was too bold. He dared to kidnap the mermaid princess. Gulu right at this moment, the sound of flowing water came from ahead. Jiang Fan and the mermaid princess swam over. Chen Yilin felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders, and he looked deeply at Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng's plan was the same as the genius from the sacred land several thousand years ago, which was to start with the mermaid princess. Although the details were different, their goal was the same. Thousands of years ago, the genius from the sacred land had won the mermaid princess' heart and entered the palace at the bottom of the lake. Zhao Feng, on the other hand, had enslaved the mermaid princess. Let's go to the palace at the bottom of the lake. At Zhao Feng's order, the group went straight into the depths of the mermaid kingdom. Along the way, the mermaid princess showed absolute submission. The mermaid kingdom's experts didn't dare to stop them, and they could only watch. 5 minutes later, the group came to a palace at the bottom of the lake surrounded by jade light. Open the door. Zhao Feng said lightly. Yes. The mermaid princess came to the door of the palace at the bottom of the lake, raised her arm, and chanted an ancient mermaid song. There was a mysterious soul fluctuation in the song that communicated with the palace at the bottom of the lake. In the mermaid kingdom, the mermaid princess has a very special status. The mermaid princess isn't necessarily the princess of the kingdom, but the royal mermaids with the most special soul talent. Zhao Feng learned a lot of secrets about the mermaid kingdom from the mermaid princess. To a certain extent, the mermaid princess was like the saintess of some tribes. They had a great and sacred meaning. At the same time, the mermaid princess also had a mission, which was related to her soul talent and inheritance. The mission of the mermaid princess is directly related to the mermaid divine palace. Zhao Feng's thoughts became clearer. No wonder the genius from the sacred land was able to easily enter the divine palace with the mermaid princess' help and obtain the immortal springs wine and illusion god wine. When the door of the mermaid divine palace slowly opened, releasing an ancient aura. Let's go in. Zhao Feng let the mermaid princess lead the way. As Zhao Feng and the others stepped into the mermaid divine palace. Humans. Surrender now. A dominating voice pierced through the soul dimension. The core disciples of the mystic true sacred clan trembled, and their minds seemed to freeze. The owner of the voice was the Mermaid King. The Mermaid Kingdom had caused such a huge commotion and the Mermaid Princess was being held hostage. How could he just stand by and watch? Of course. At this moment, the Mermaid King was still in his palace, but his void god realm intent had appeared. Mermaid King, your void god realm intent can't kill me with one thought. However, I can destroy the mermaid princess soul with just one thought. Zhao Feng's figure stopped, and he remained calm. He wasn't as uneasy as Jiang Fan and the others. He had obviously considered the Mermaid King in his plan. Chapter 648. The intent of a void god realm king condensed the heaven-earth yuan qi in an area of water. The thoughts of the core disciples of the mystic true sacred clan seemed to freeze, and they couldn't resist at all. Even Qin Yilin and Jiang Fan, who had the 10,000 ancient races ranking, felt uneasy. It was hard to imagine that Zhao Feng could remain so calm despite facing the king intent head-on. Human, you're courting death. A soul dimension trembled, and a magnificent power made the space around Zhao Feng feel as if it was being squeezed. Zhao Feng's face went red, and his breathing quickened. The bones in his body started to crack, and it was as if his knees were going to bend and yield to a king. However, Zhao Feng's body, was able to withstand it. In terms of life force, he was close to a true king, and his physical strength was even stronger after being strengthened by the ancient dream realm aura, the heart blood essence, and the purple-scaled grass. On top of that, Zhao Feng had to withstand the pressure of the ancient dream realm for a long time, and his body contained an ancient aura. Even Jiang Fan's bloodline aura wasn't able to suppress Zhao Feng. Far away, within a palace, this brat's soul has already surpassed the half-step void god realm. The Mermaid King's expression became solemn. A measly small origin core realm ant was able to resist his king intent. Zhao Feng's mastery of the Tao of the soul had also surpassed common sense. Cultivating the 10,000 divine thoughts technique would help him break through to the void god realm in the future. Father, Please don't stop, master. The mermaid princess' voice was filled with sorrow as she begged. After being imprinted with the dark heart seal, she completely submitted to Zhao Feng. Although she still had emotions, her master was more important than anything else. This was the scariest part of the dark heart seal, it could enslave a being through their thoughts. Damned human! The mermaid king roared as he clenched his fists. Being a void god realm king, when had he ever submitted to a puny human ant? Everyone below the void god realm was an ant. This saying had been passed down since ancient times and was recorded in ancient books. Normal origin core realms wouldn't even be able to block a void god realm intent. Those below the king realm are all ants. It's useless against me. Zhao Feng smiled coldly and ordered the mermaid princess to lead the way. Chen Yilin and the others were in a daze. Under the suffocating pressure, they pushed forward like zombies. This Zhao Feng doesn't have the bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races, but he has such strength. How is that possible? Jiang Fan's heart was in a mess, and his sense of defeat was getting stronger and stronger. In particular, the eye of heaven descended from the sky, like an ancient god looking down on the world. This aura even made his 10,000 ancient race bloodline feel uneasy. Human. If anything happens to my daughter, I won't let you off. The Mermaid King's furious roar shook souls. Mermaid King. Zhao Feng replied indifferently, as long as we achieve our goal and leave safely, I will naturally remove the soul restriction spell on your daughter. But if you do anything out of the ordinary, I can't guarantee that. The Mermaid King's divine sense circled the entrance of the palace for a long time before finally stopping. That brat's eye bloodline isn't simple. Even someone with the bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races has to listen to him. The Mermaid King gradually calmed down. Facing a king, Zhao Feng didn't panic at all. It was obvious that this youth had come prepared. He didn't dare to stop them anymore and could only watch as Zhao Feng and company entered the Mermaid Divine Palace. The Mermaid Divine Palace was a forbidden ground for the mermaids. In the past, only the mermaid princess who had accepted the inheritance of the Divine Palace could enter. Otherwise, normal mermaids would be killed by the will of the demigod Forgotten Garden if they entered. Even kings weren't an exception. This intent was the god of this secret dimension and ruled over everything. King. There seemed to be other humans nearby. A mermaid powerhouse came to report. The Mermaid King's expression darkened as his divine sense instantly covered the entire mermaid kingdom. As expected, he saw a group of humans with wicked auras. Stop! Tu Jusing, who was leading the way, suddenly waved his hand. Tu Jusing's group didn't completely give up on the Purple Smoke Lake after their defeat. Everyone analyzed that Zhao Feng's goal of dominating the Purple Smoke Lake and heading deeper might be for the Mermaid Kingdom's benefit. Therefore, Tu Jusing gathered the geniuses of the other forces, including beast tamers and soul Dao geniuses. One of the soul Dao geniuses at the Sovereign Lord level also controlled a few mermaids and found out where Zhao Feng and company were, as well as what was happening in the Mermaid Kingdom. Brother Tu, what's wrong? With Zhao Feng leading the way, we'll be able to reap the benefits. Isn't that great? Everyone started to move. After all, with Zhao Feng leading the way, there was less risk for them to reap the benefits from the back. Of course. They didn't know that the Mermaid King had already come out of seclusion. After all, the Mermaid King was only using his void god intent to fight with Zhao Feng and company. Maybe it's just an illusion. Continue to follow them. Tu Jusing nodded. Just then, his soul and bloodline felt a hint of danger, as if he was being spied on. However, that feeling soon disappeared. These geniuses aren't simple. The Mermaid King's eyes twinkled. From their conversation, it wasn't hard to tell that they weren't on the same side as Zhao Feng, they were enemies. Soon, he came up with a plan in his mind. It would be better to let these two groups fight and kill each other inside the temple. He wasn't too worried about the mermaid princess' safety. Not only could Zhao Feng not harm the mermaid princess, but he would also have to protect her because she was his only bargaining chip. Furthermore, with the mermaid princess' ability to adapt to the purple smoke lake, her bloodline power was more than enough to protect herself. All clansmen, retreat 20 miles from the divine palace. The mermaid king quickly ordered. Although he saw Tu Jusing and the others, he turned a blind eye to them. On the way. With the help of the beast tamer and soul Dao geniuses, Tu Jusing's group avoided the heavily guarded area and approached the palace at the bottom of the lake. The resistance is smaller than I imagined. Looks like that Zhao Feng has the majority of the mermaid race's forces tied down. Tu Jusing's group felt weird. What was even more incredible was that the door to the palace at the bottom of the lake was open. What had happened to the mermaid kingdom? Tu Jusing and company couldn't understand, but they couldn't retreat now. Zhao Feng didn't bring his army into the palace at the bottom of the lake. Even if we meet, we still have the ability to fight. The group of 10 or so walked into the palace at the bottom of the lake. The mermaid king snickered coldly as he watched Tu Jusing and company enter the palace. Without his permission, Tu Jusing and company wouldn't have been able to reach the mermaid divine palace so easily. Another person's strength seems to be pretty good. The mermaid king's divine sense found a figure at the edge of the mermaid kingdom. It was a warm youth. His cultivation had reached the late-stage Great Origin Core realm. Looks like that Zhao Feng has entered the mermaid kingdom. The warm youth used his intent of death to clearly determine where Zhao Feng was. Suddenly, the warm youth's expression changed dramatically. King intent? His senses were even sharper than Tu Jusing's. The existence of a king in the mermaid kingdom made the warm youth wary. It should be the mermaid king. The warm youth stood still and didn't move. He felt like the king intent didn't have any enmity toward him, it was just spying on him. Zhao Feng, I'll let you live for a while. The sunny young man stood where he was and waited. In the palace at the bottom of the lake in the mermaid kingdom under the lead of the mermaid princess, Zhao Feng walked into the legendary mermaid divine palace. The inside of the mermaid divine temple was unexpectedly empty. Apart from some statues and carvings, there was nothing else. However, as they walked deeper, they smelled alcohol. Meow meow. The little thieving cat jumped out from Zhao Feng's shoulder and inspected the area in front of him. Zhao Feng couldn't help but look forward to it. The little thieving cat had a strong sense of smell when it came to treasures, especially spiritual wine. Meow. The little thieving cat nimbly jumped onto the mermaid princess' shoulder and crossed its paws in front of its chest. It seemed to be very old and arrogant. This cat. The mermaid princess couldn't help but look weirdly at the little thieving cat. Meow meow. The little thieving cat waved its paw and pointed downward as it harumphed. You know the wine cellar is down there. The mermaid princess was extremely surprised. Chen Yilin and company looked at the little thieving cat a few more times. As expected. The mermaid princess led the group into the underground wine cellar below the mermaid divine palace. In reality, Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye had scanned the first floor of the palace and didn't find anything. Apart from some inheritances related to the mermaid race, they didn't have any effect on humans. After entering the underground wine cellar, the thick smell of alcohol intoxicated everyone. Some of the core disciples felt slightly dizzy. Zhao Feng looked around. The underground wine cellar was even bigger than the first floor of the mermaid divine palace. At the center of the underground wine cellar was an enormous fountain. The fountain was 20 yards wide. In the middle of the pool, there was a lifelike crystal statue of a beautiful mermaid. Fountains spurted out of the hundreds of small holes on the statue of the mermaid. Everyone found that the mermaid in the fountain was 30 to 40% similar to the mermaid princess. This made Zhao Feng fall into thought. The structure of the fountain was also very unique. Outside the fountain were crystal tubes that connected to every corner of the wine cellar. In every corner of the wine cellar, there were wine cups and jars of different styles. Some were made of metal, some were made of bamboo, some were made of porcelain, and some were made of crystal. These wine cups and jugs were filled with 70% spirit wine and immortal wine. Moreover, they would be brewed again every once in a while to maintain their freshness or retain some of the unique warmth and aftertaste of the wine. Of course, the wine cups and jars were all sealed in crystal cabinets. The entire underground wine cellar can automatically brew wine with the mermaid fountain at the center. Those from the mystic true sacred clan were tongue-tied. The entire underground wine cellar was a system that brewed hundreds of rare wines with the mermaid fountain at the center. This is the private wine cellar of a demigod? Zhao Feng took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement in his heart. Chapter 649. Within the underground cellar of the Mermaid Divine Palace, those from the mystic true sacred clan were overjoyed as they looked at the mermaid fountain and the various wines in the crystal cabinets. Is there the legendary immortal spring and illusionary god wine in this underground wine cellar? Zhao Feng asked the mermaid princess. The Mermaid Divine Palace was the sacred land of the Mermaid Kingdom, but it was also a forbidden ground. Normal mermaids couldn't enter the Mermaid Divine Palace. However, the mermaid princesses of every generation had extraordinary soul talents, and their inheritances were inextricably linked to the Mermaid Divine Hall. Yes, the mermaid princess said confidently. Hearing that, everyone's hearts shook. Back then, that genius from the sacred land had obtained the immortal springs wine and illusion god wine, and he broke through to the void god realm in just a few years. The immortal springs wine could increase one's lifespan by 1,000 years, and it could increase one's cultivation. 1,000 years of lifespan was enough for normal sovereigns to comprehend void god realm kings without worry. The illusion god wine's effect was even more mysterious, and it could allow one to enter a profound state and comprehend even higher levels. With the immortal springs wine, one had at least a 50% chance of reaching the void god realm. With the illusion god wine, one had at least a 70% chance of reaching the void god realm in the future. If I can have both the immortal springs wine and the illusion god wine, reaching the void god realm is basically guaranteed. Thinking up to there, everyone's breathing quickened. Right at this moment, the mermaid princess spoke. The immortal springs wine is in the mermaid fountain. However, not all fountains are the immortal springs wine. The mermaid princess paused. Everyone calmed down. There were hundreds of holes on the mermaid statue. Only the liquid that comes out from its lower body is the true immortal springs wine. As she spoke up to there, the mermaid princess' face went red. Everyone paused for a moment before feeling awkward. One of the female disciples also lowered her head in embarrassment. Looking closely, Zhao Feng found that the hole connecting the body and the tail of the mermaid statue was releasing a crystal-clear liquid that wasn't normal. That's the immortal springs wine. The two core disciples couldn't contain their greed and excitement as they approached the fountain. Wait! The mermaid princess called out, but it was too late. As soon as the two true disciples got close to the mermaid fountain, their bodies began to sway, as if they were drunk. What a strange power! The fountain pool is actually a wine brewing pool. Even without breathing, the wine aura directly seeps into the body and even affects the soul. Zhao Feng was speechless. Such a strong wine smell, as expected of the wine brewed by a demigod. One had to know that the physique of a demigod was several times stronger than that of a sovereign or a king. If a mortal drank a bottle of ordinary wine, they would be drunk to death. But imagine a beast as large as a mountain drinking a bottle of wine, it could basically be ignored. By the same logic, a demigod's body and alcohol tolerance far exceeded that of a mortal's. Many of the wines brewed here can even make a demigod drunk. It was very difficult for ordinary cultivators to get close. Even if you can get close, your mind and consciousness will be drunk. How can you get the wine? The mermaid princess asked. After hearing the words, the crowd wore a stern look on their faces. The two true disciples that tried to get close were quickly pulled back by Qin Yilin and Jiang Fan. Then where's the wine in the cabinet? Zhao Feng's gaze landed on the crystal cabinet. The wine brewed in the fountain was sent to the cups and jugs in the cabinet. Because the cabinet is sealed, the smell of wine is weaker. However, the material of the cabinet can't be damaged by anyone below the void god realm. It's also very difficult to open the door of the cabinet. The mermaid princess explained. Hearing that, everyone started to think. There was no doubt that the illusion god wine was in the cabinet. Zhao Feng had tried to control the ghost corpses to get close to the crystal pool. However, the strong smell of wine had spread to his soul. The power of the wine can seep into the mental dimension. Zhao Feng also felt that this was troublesome. Even automatons that didn't have a mind of their own wouldn't be able to complete the task. This was because the automatons and their masters had a mental connection. But how did that genius from the sacred land obtain the immortal spring wine and the illusion god wine? Chen Yilin asked. It's a secret from several thousand years ago, and it's hard to find out. However, the mermaid princess fell into a deep sleep and died within a few years, and she even lost a sacred treasure of the mermaid race. The mermaid princess sighed. Hearing that, everyone's heart dropped. It was obvious that the genius from the sacred land was able to succeed because of luck. It was already a miracle that they were able to reach this step. Next, everyone gave it a try. However, no one was able to get within 20 yards of the crystal pool. In the demigod Forgotten Garden, the maximum range of a peak Great Origin Core Realm's attack was only 20 yards. At the bottom of the purple smoke lake, it was a third less. In other words, no one could use quintessence combat skills to extract the wine from the crystal pool. As for the wine cabinet, it was sealed shut, making it even more difficult to open the cabinet door. Other than Zhao Feng, everyone else had tried, but they had all failed. Zhao Feng didn't try. He stared at the cups and jugs in the crystal cabinet with twinkling eyes. Chen Yilin and company started to think. In the end, they thought of a method, which was to use ropes to tie someone up and throw them over, instantly absorbing the immortal spring's wine or other wine. After absorbing the wine, they would quickly pull the person back. This way, the person absorbing the wine wouldn't be able to withstand the smell for long. Only by sending someone over can they absorb it. If it's just a tool, even if they absorb the wine, it will be washed away by the lake water. Chen Yilin confirmed this idea. After all, this was the underwater world. The crystal pool and the cabinet were independent domains, which was why they could ignore the underwater environment. This method is indeed feasible. Put the soul armor on the person tied up and increase their resistance against the smell of the wine. Since it's only for an instant, the amount of alcohol they can withstand is limited. Zhao Feng nodded his head faintly. If they wanted to absorb the immortal spring's wine and the wine, they would need to cooperate. According to the previous plan. Before entering the palace, the profits will be split 73. However, after entering the palace, the profits will depend on their own abilities. Chen Yilin suddenly smiled. Zhao Feng didn't object. Because in front of the palace at the bottom of the lake, all kinds of income mainly came from his marine army. Now, Zhao Feng's marine army had no use. PFFF. A core disciple was tied up by a metal rope and thrown into the crystal pool. The person responsible for swinging the rope was Jiang Fan. His physique was the strongest after Zhao Feng. This was the first time. That core disciple was thrown in front of the mermaid statue, but he wasn't precise enough. He only touched a little water before he was pulled back. Oh, that core disciple was drunk and couldn't stand steadily. It was hard for him to do it a second time. I will throw it more accurately next time. Jiang Fan was very confident. Let me do it. Chen Yilin smiled. His cultivation was the highest, and his bloodline physique was extraordinary. PFFF. Chen Yilin was tied up and thrown in front of the mermaid statue. At that instant, the smell of alcohol filled his body. Chen Yilin used a bottle in his hand to catch a mouthful of the Immortal Springs wine. Hee hee. Chen Yilin was pulled back and put away the bottle. He had caught a mouthful of the Immortal Springs wine just now, but it wasn't much. I need to rest. Someone else. Even Chen Yilin felt slightly drunk, and his consciousness wasn't as clear as usual. In reality, he could still try a second time. However, to be cautious, Chen Yilin had to maintain a clear mind to deal with all kinds of situations. Junior brother Zhao, you can try working with the mermaid princess. Chen Yilin looked at Zhao Feng. He was a bit curious as to why Zhao Feng didn't do anything. In this regard, he was even a little wary. Master. The mermaid princess was slightly shy as she listened to the order. As long as Zhao Feng said it, she was willing to work with him to take the Immortal Springs wine. Let's take the Illusion God wine first. Zhao Feng said. His physique was close to the Void God realm, so he needed a Void God realm intent. Zhao Feng's first target was the Illusion God wine, followed by the Immortal Springs wine. Illusion God wine. Chen Yilin cracked a smile. The wine was placed in the cabinets. It wasn't easy to open the cabinets. Even if he managed to open the cabinets, the smell of alcohol would make him fall into an eternal sleep. Master, the Illusion God wine is in the purple crystal cup in the center. The mermaid princess said. No one knew the mermaid divine palace better than the mermaid princess. N. Zhao Feng nodded his head. As he thought to there, his left eye focused on the purple crystal cup. At this moment, Chen Yilin and company took another mouthful of the Immortal Springs wine. Jiang Fan and company looked curiously at Zhao Feng. What method would Zhao Feng use to take the Illusion God wine? When a wisp of eye bloodline power formed a whirlpool that engulfed the purple crystal cup. The hearts of Chen Yilin and company jumped. Could it be a spatial eye bloodline technique? The true disciples present were all experienced and knowledgeable. Whoosh! Zhao Feng's body shook. With a boom, his eye bloodline power seemed to be suppressed by heaven and earth. The cup contained a magnificent intent that made Zhao Feng's method of taking the Illusion God wine fail. My void movement is complete, but I can't move the target away. Zhao Feng knew that this power came from the demigod intent on the wine cup in the cabinet. The demigod intent covered the entire demigod Forgotten Garden. It was the ruler of the demigod Forgotten Garden. Zhe, as expected of the demigod Forgotten Garden. That wine cabinet has the ability to stop spatial techniques. The demigod Forgotten Garden has existed for so many years, and there have been a few spatial geniuses. For example, Nan Gongxing specializes in spatial techniques. Chen Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company weren't surprised. On the contrary, they were gloating. Let's try again. Zhao Feng didn't give up so easily. He thought about it. The magnificent intent just now seemed to come from the cup and the wine cabinet. Meow meow. The little thieving cat stood on his shoulder and waved its paws. Okay. Zhao Feng understood what the little thieving cat meant. Spatial movement. Zhao Feng's left eye locked onto the little thieving cat. Instantly, a faint ripple of eye bloodline power covered the little thieving cat. Shwa! The little thieving cat disappeared from his sight. The eyes of Chen Yilin and company bulged out. In the next instant, meow. The little thieving cat appeared in the wine cabinet and leaned against the Illusion God wine. It opened its mouth and swallowed it. Chapter 650. The little thieving cat opened its mouth and swallowed the Illusion God wine along with the cup. Chen Yilin, Jiang Fan, and the others were left dumbfounded. The Illusion God wine that so many experts couldn't even dream of was easily obtained by this cat. Meow meow. After the little thieving cat swallowed the Illusion God wine, a hint of drunkenness appeared in its eyes. It then opened its mouth and swallowed the red and bronze cups next to it. After doing all this, it started to walk drunkenly and its consciousness started to blur. This cat's tolerance for alcohol is so high. The mermaid princess couldn't believe it. Even Qin Yilin and company wouldn't be able to last so long under such a strong smell of alcohol. Right when the little thieving cat was about to take its fourth target, spatial movement. A faint ripple of eye bloodline power formed a blurry whirlpool that swallowed the little thieving cat. At this crucial moment, Zhao Feng knew when to stop. Meow meow meow. The little thieving cat reeked of alcohol appeared on Zhao Feng's shoulder and instantly started to jump up and down. Everyone was dazed. Qin Yilin and company looked at the little thieving cat with fiery gazes. The little thieving cat's high tolerance for alcohol and intelligence made everyone sigh. If their guesses were correct, the little thieving cat's body had the ability to store items. Little thieving cat. Zhao Feng's left eye was like a bottomless pond, and a cold power seeped into the little thieving cat's body. Meow. The drunkenness on the little thieving cat's face faded slightly. The Eye of Ice Soul has a cooling effect on drunkenness. Zhao Feng nodded his head. He and the little thieving cat were connected mentally, so when the little thieving cat was affected by the smell of alcohol, his soul was also affected. Qin Yilin and company didn't pay attention to this detail. Even though the corrosion of the smell of alcohol on Zhao Feng was only limited to his soul, it was only half that of the little thieving cat. However, there was no sign of drunkenness on his face. Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye was immune to mental energy, and this smell of alcohol was no exception. Of course, Zhao Feng didn't want to take the risk. Although his state of existence was close to that of a king, his ability to resist the smell of alcohol was definitely not as good as the god's spiritual eye. The danger that came from the will of death was in the purple smoke lake. If Zhao Feng's guess was correct, the sunny youth should have come to the purple smoke lake as well. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, did you obtain the illusion god wine? The eyes of Qin Yilin and the others were filled with eagerness. Zhao Feng also looked at the little thieving cat. Meow, meow. The little thieving cat opened its mouth and spat out a purple crystal cup that was 70% illusory wine. It gave off a faint aura that made one feel intoxicated, and their consciousness seemed to break free from the shackles of their bodies. That's right, it's the illusion god wine. Zhao Feng was certain. With a wave of his hand, he stored the illusion god wine into his ancient metal ring. Meow, meow. The little thieving cat also disappeared into the ancient metal ring. Come out. Zhao Feng chuckled. He grabbed the cat's tail and pulled the little thieving cat out. Meow, the little thieving cat unwillingly spat out a mahogany wine cup and a bronze wine cup. The mahogany wine cup radiated a terrifying fiery aura that instantly turned the water world into a vacuum. What a terrifying fiery aura. Everyone's body, mind, and soul felt as if they were being roasted. Dragon flame wine. The mermaid princess blurted out as her expression changed dramatically. The aura contained within the dragon flame wine was probably even stronger than the illusion god wine. Of course, that was only in terms of the power contained within it. At the same time, the bronze wine cup emitted a numbing electric current. Everyone present felt their souls convulsing. Lightning cloud wine. The mermaid princess' voice trembled slightly. Whoosh! Whoosh! Zhao Feng waved his hand and put away the dragon flame wine and lightning cloud wine. The dragon flame wine was fire elemental, so it wasn't of much use to Zhao Feng right now. However, the lightning cloud wine was related to lightning, so it should be of great help to Zhao Feng. However, the aura radiating from these two wines was too dominating. In this kind of environment, Zhao Feng didn't dare to try it. The grade of the dragon flame wine and lightning cloud wine is probably no lower than the illusion god wine. The expressions of Qin Yilin and company kept on changing. One of the heavily drunk core disciples looked at Zhao Feng with ill intent. But in the end, Qin Yilin and company suppressed the urge to attack Zhao Feng. They all knew how strong Zhao Feng was. Furthermore, there was the mermaid princess and the thieving cat with unfathomable abilities. On Qin Yilan's side, the core disciples were all drunk and their battle power had decreased. Only Jiang Fan and Qin Yilan kept their heads clear. Among them, Jiang Fan took a small sip of the Immortal Springs wine and sat down cross-legged. The true yuan and aura of life within his body surged. As expected of the Immortal Springs wine, Zhao Feng found that Jiang Fan's state of existence and true yuan cultivation were clearly increasing. According to this trend, Jiang Fan would be able to break through a small rank in a few days after drinking a large mouthful of the Immortal Springs wine. Master, with your strength, I believe it won't be hard for you to take some of the Immortal Springs wine. The mermaid princess had a look of admiration and worship. Meow meow. The little thieving cat volunteered. Zhao Feng nodded his head and took out a rope. He tied the little thieving cat and threw it into the crystal pond. His control of strength was better than Jiang Fan's. But this time, the little thieving cat was accurately thrown into the lower part of the mermaid statue. Meow. The little thieving cat opened its mouth under the mermaid statue and sucked in some of the immortal spring water, which was absorbed by the little thieving cat. It lasted for an entire 3 breaths. The amount of immortal springs wine the little thieving cat absorbed was 10 times more than what Qin Yilan and company had. Return. Zhao Feng reached out and pulled the little thieving cat back. Qin Yilan, Jiang Fan, and company had slightly ugly expressions. According to the agreement, what they obtained after entering the palace at the bottom of the lake depended on their own abilities. They originally wanted to have the advantage of numbers, but Zhao Feng's side had obtained so much. Suddenly, this Zhao Feng doesn't look drunk. Qin Yilan's heart shook when he realized this. Logically speaking, Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat were connected. The smell of alcohol would affect the owner's soul. The little thieving cat had attacked twice. However, Zhao Feng didn't look drunk at all. What did this mean? He hasn't used his full strength yet. Qin Yilan was shocked when he came to this conclusion. Zhao Feng was still holding back. Why was that? Was it because he was wary of those from the same clan? Qin Yilan sighed in his heart. This Zhao Feng wasn't just a normal level of caution. Of course. He didn't know that Zhao Feng wasn't wary of them. Tu Jusing's group has also entered the Mermaid Divine Palace. There's also that warm youth, Wen Luan, who's near the Mermaid Kingdom. Zhao Feng's mind was still looking into the distance. After all, his army was spread out near the Mermaid Kingdom. Pop! 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 The sound of water soon came from the stairs. Ha ha ha, found the place. Tu Jusing's group entered the underground wine cellar. How was this possible? The disciples of the mystic true sacred clan were filled with disbelief. They had used all their methods to enter the Mermaid Divine Palace, including kidnapping the mermaid princess. However, how did Tu Jusing's group enter the Mermaid Divine Palace? There's only one possibility. Zhao Feng snickered coldly in his heart. Without the Mermaid King's permission, Tu Jusing's group wouldn't be able to enter the underground wine cellar so easily. Instantly, the atmosphere in the underground wine cellar was tense. Tu Jusing's group had the absolute advantage in numbers. On the mystic true sacred clan's side, several core disciples were drunk and their battle power had dropped by 20 to 30%. Tu Jusing's side also had several sovereign lords, soul Dao geniuses, beast tamers, sword Dao, and ghostly corpse Dao experts. When this group worked together, their power was immeasurable. Chapter 651. The sudden appearance of Tu Jusing's group caught the disciples of the mystic true sacred clan off guard. Qin Yilan was wary and immediately exchanged glances with Zhao Feng. Tu Jusing's group had clearly come prepared. They were accumulating their strength and waiting to act. On the other hand, Qin Yilan and company from the mystic true sacred clan were slightly drunk. 2 or 3 core disciples even had blurred eyes. The wine cellar of a demigod. Tu Jusing laughed weirdly. Even though they had the advantage in numbers, Tu Jusing didn't attack easily. On the Mystic True Sacred Clan's side, Qin Yilin, Jiang Fan, and Zhao Feng were the top geniuses of the Sacred Land. Qin Yilin was also one of the 10 geniuses of the Sacred Land. As for Zhao Feng, Tu Jusing had personally experienced just how difficult it was to deal with him. Furthermore, Jiang Fan, who had the bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races, had explosive power comparable to the 10 geniuses. Seeing this, Qin Yilin let out a breath. From the looks of it, Tu Jusing didn't have any intention of attacking. Both sides had their own advantages. If they fought, it wouldn't benefit either side. The atmosphere on the field eased up a little. Tu Jusing's group also understood the layout of the wine cellar and prepared to obtain the wine. Wait. An indifferent voice caused the slightly soothing atmosphere to freeze again. The person who spoke was a blue-haired youth with cold eyes. Zhao Feng, are you trying to stop me? Tu Jusing's expression became grim. He was wary of Zhao Feng. Tu Jusing's group of more than a dozen people had been defeated by Zhao Feng with one move, and many of them had been injured or killed. Tu Jusing's mind had been injured in that battle, and he had only just recovered. Even now, Zhao Feng didn't have an army with him, but his strength and mastery of the Soul Dao were terrifying. All of you, stay here. Zhao Feng's expression was cold and filled with killing intent. Instantly, the blue-haired figure exuded an ancient and primitive aura from his bloodline and physique. What a strong ancient aura! Jiang Fan felt a chill in his heart. Ever since they met in the Void Ocean Spirit Palace, Zhao Feng's bloodline aura had become stronger and stronger. Meanwhile, an ice-cold soul pressure permeated this underwater world. Apart from Tu Jusing himself, many of the experts in his group felt a suffocating pressure in their bodies and souls. Zhao Feng, do you really want to start a war, or are you just trying to intimidate Tu Jusing? Qin Yilin was shocked and sent a voice transmission through his spiritual sense. To be honest, he didn't have much confidence. He didn't want to become enemies with Tu Jusing's team. After all, the profits in this underground wine cellar could be obtained by anyone, as long as they had the ability. Zhao Feng used his actions to answer Qin Yilin. Whoosh! He waved his hand, and a supremacy-rank golden skeleton floated in front of him. Master! The mermaid princess shook her tail and appeared on the other side. Instantly, Zhao Feng now had 2 supremacies by his side. Among them, the mermaid princess had an innate soul talent, which allowed her to display a greater advantage in the underwater world. Meow meow. A black flag appeared in the little thieving cat's hand, and as it waved it, a thick cloud of dark flames that carried the power of ghost corpses covered everything within 100 yards. Prepare for battle. Tu Jusing's expression changed dramatically. Zhao Feng's methods and power had exceeded his expectations. At this point in time, many people present couldn't understand. Why did Zhao Feng want to become enemies with Tu Jusing? Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, are you sure you want to do this? Fighting to the death isn't good for any of us. Qin Yilin said in a solemn tone. 10 purple scaled grass. Even if you don't participate, I will. Zhao Feng said emotionlessly. He didn't explain why. At this moment in time, Tu Jusing's threat was secondary. There was a bigger threat at the edge of the Mermaid Kingdom. If Tu Jusing and the sunny young man, Wen Luan, attacked together, it would be even more dangerous. Luckily for now, Wen Luan, the disciple of the Emperor of Death, didn't enter the Mermaid Divine Palace. Fine. Qin Yilin was slightly helpless, but he still agreed. If Zhao Feng wanted to attack, they wouldn't be able to escape. If that was the case, he might as well choose the 10 purple scaled grass and work with Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng, how confident are you? Jiang Fan asked. If it's just me, I'm 90% confident. With you guys, it's 100%. Hearing this, Qin Yilin and Jiang Fan almost choked. Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Feng turned into a blue stream of water and disappeared in a flash. In the world of water, Zhao Feng used his water bloodline. At the same time, the power of the ghost corpse cursed array covered Zhao Feng's figure and suppressed Tu Jusing's group. The mermaid princess and the golden skeleton, two sovereign lords, also charged over. You're courting death. Tu Jusing's cold roar echoed in the underground cellar. Suddenly, the illusions of two demonic flaming dragons appeared behind him, and the ancient power of the demonic Tao pushed away the ghost corpse's resentment. This time, Tu Jusing didn't underestimate his opponent and used the inherited battle technique of the Sacred Sun sect. Boom! The blue water around Zhao Feng was as deep as the ocean, and a layer of dark purple scales appeared on his body. In the purple smoke lake, the power of his water bloodline and his newly added defensive bloodline had both become stronger. The two geniuses clashed head-on for the second time. Boom! Tu Jusing was knocked back several meters by the punch, and his blood churned. The ripples on Zhao Feng's body dimmed a little, and his figure turned into a blue stream of water that disappeared in a flash. It was obvious that Zhao Feng's bloodline had a greater advantage in the world of water. Your opponent is me. As soon as Tu Jusing came to a stop, a profound white crystalline light shot toward him, reflecting rays of silver-white crystalline light. Qin Yilin. Tu Jusing didn't dare to be careless. The illusions of the demonic flaming dragons suddenly expanded and clashed with Qin Yilin. Right at this moment, arg! Screams came from the demonic Dao group as they were suppressed by the ghost corpses. Zhao Feng, the mermaid princess, and the golden skeleton used the cover of the ghost corpse cursed array to sweep through the demonic Dao group. Meow meow. The little thieving cat waved the array flag, and surges of dark flames turned into ghost corpses in the shape of snakes that wrapped around some of the enemy geniuses. Hee hee. After killing one or two people, Zhao Feng retreated to the stairs at the entrance. Tu Jusing and company felt their hearts go cold when they saw this. Zhao Feng really did want to kill them all in one fell swoop. Ha ha ha. Tu Jusing, take this. Jiang Fan's 10,000 ancient races bloodline suddenly exploded as he charged over from the side. Boom! Boom! Pang! Tu Jusing was forced back as he fought against two people at the same time, and blood leaked out of his mouth. The 10,000 ancient races bloodline showed obvious signs of suppressing his demon Dao bloodline. Within the group, 2 or 3 people split off to deal with Jiang Fan, but they weren't his match. Tu Jusing was worried about Zhao Feng the most. However, whatever he was afraid of would come. Eye of Illusion, Illusion City Maze. A blue ripple appeared in Zhao Feng's left eye, and a whirlpool of water seemed to form within it, creating a lethal attraction force. Shwa! Everyone's hearts shook. In the next instant, the underground wine cellar in front of him had been replaced by a desolate ancient city. The ancient city was covered in white mist, and the terrain inside was complex like a maze. Not good. It's a soul Dao illusion. A soul Dao genius from the demonic Dao group couldn't help but exclaim. However, after cultivating the Dark Eye secret technique and the 10,000 divine thoughts technique, Zhao Feng's soul Dao had reached a new level. The illusion city maze now covered the soul consciousness of all targets within range, and the power of illusions went deeper into the soul. At the same time, the ancient and mysterious mermaid song drifted over, causing one's mind to go into a daze, sinking into that beautiful yet melancholic music. So, the mermaid princess cooperated with Zhao Feng and used her soul talent, mermaid song. The Song of Mermaids was one of the most legendary types of soul music Dao. In terms of bewitching illusions, female mermaids specialized in them. This mermaid princess mastery of soul Dao illusions isn't any weaker than mine, and the bewitching power is even purer. Zhao Feng was secretly surprised. The combination of the illusion city maze and the mermaid song pushed the power of illusions to the limit. Those below the half-step void god realm wouldn't be able to escape. Arg! Screams came from the demonic Dao geniuses near the ghost corpse cursed array. Quick! Retreat! Tu Jusing exclaimed in shock and sucked in a cold breath. Qin Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company were all stunned. What Zhao Feng said before was indeed not a lie. Even without Qin Yilin and company, Zhao Feng was 90% confident that he could defeat Tu Jusing's group. Where do you think you're going? Qin Yilin and Jiang Fan teamed up to kill Tu Jusing. Furthermore, Zhao Feng smiled faintly as he waited at the entrance of the stairs. Demonic sky body. Tu Jusing yelled under the pressure of danger. The dark demonic flames around his body expanded and turned into the image of a demonic sovereign. In an instant, Qin Yilin and Jiang Fan were pushed back by a domineering aura. Tu Jusing's combat power doubled after using his bloodline technique. At this moment, even a few half-step king realms wouldn't be a match for him. All of you, die. Tu Jusing's combat power suppressed everyone. At this moment, Qin Yilin, Jiang Fan, and even Zhao Feng couldn't fight him head-on. At most, they could stay alive. Die! Tu Jusing gave a savage smile as he charged toward Zhao Feng. He hated Zhao Feng the most. Secondly, Zhao Feng was blocking the entrance of the stairs. Divine light of destruction. A streak of green light pierced through the world in the water. It trembled and was dazzling, and it was suffused with countless specks of piercingly cold light. Zhao Feng's left eye was like an azure moon. Boom! The dark demonic flames around Tu Jusing and the image of the demonic sovereign that connected heaven and earth were instantly peeled off. The divine light of destruction was said to be able to destroy everything in heaven and earth. Zhao Feng's divine light of destruction was copied from the Golden Sun family. Although it wasn't the purest, it was close to being perfected with his soul Dao Eye bloodline techniques. Zhao Feng also knows an eye bloodline technique that can analyze and split things. Qin Yilin and company were surprised. The divine light of destruction had weakened Tu Jusing's demonic sky body by 20 to 30%. He's still one of the 10 geniuses of the sacred land. His bloodline techniques are several levels higher than those from the other zones. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. If it was just a normal strengthening technique, Zhao Feng's divine light of destruction might have been able to destroy it. Ice Soul Shooting Line. A half-transparent ray of light shot toward Tu Jusing. Tu Jusing's body shook slightly as his soul shook, and his speed slowed down. At the same time, Qin Yilin and Jiang Fan also used their strongest bloodline techniques and attacked Tu Jusing from behind. Wah! Tu Jusing spat out a mouthful of blood and roared as he turned into a demonic figure that leapt toward Zhao Feng. Chapter 652. Tu Jusing leaped toward Zhao Feng with his injured body. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, watch out! Qin Yilin and company broke out in cold sweat. In the demonic sky body state, Tu Jusing's intent was connected to the demonic sky, and he was almost invincible against those below the void god realm. And this was even after being weakened by 30% by the divine light of destruction. One had to admit that each of the 10 geniuses of the sacred land was a star in the sky. A faint smile appeared on Zhao Feng's face as he stood there calmly. Although Tu Jusing's battle power was strong, Zhao Feng wouldn't have any problem staying alive. If he used the void space eye slash, there was a high chance that he could instantly kill Tu Jusing. However, Zhao Feng's true threat wasn't Tu Jusing. He needed to conserve more of his battle power in order to deal with future dangers. Wind Lightning 100 changes. A ball of purple lightning released from Zhao Feng's body. Whoosh! 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 The ball of purple lightning split into 2, and then into 4. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen afterimages of Zhao Feng appeared near the entrance of the staircase. Whoosh! Tu Jusing's palm instantly missed. What was incredible was that the surrounding purple wind shadows all had offensive abilities, and their auras were connected, making it hard to tell which one was real and which was fake. After cultivating the 10,000 divine thoughts technique, Zhao Feng's wind lightning 100 changes had reached a whole new level. Each of the purple wind shadows was extremely cunning. Divine light of destruction. The second streak of green light pierced through the world in the water. It trembled and was dazzling, and it was suffused with countless specks of sharp light. Boom! The battle power of Tu Jising's demonic sky body decreased by another 20% to 30%, and it started to become unstable. Wings of wind and lightning. Purple destruction wings of wind and lightning extended from Zhao Feng's back, and the power of his wind lightning intense skyrocketed, making him seem like an ancient demon surrounded by wind and lightning. Boom! A terrifying surge of purple destruction wind lightning radiated an ancient aura of destruction and spread across a radius of 20 yards. Break! As Zhao Feng punched out with his palm, one could vaguely see a purple destruction wind thunder dragon roaring in the destructive storm. With the support of the wings of wind and thunder, Zhao Feng's speed, attack, and concept of wind and thunder were all raised to a whole new level. As for Tu Jising, under the two beams of divine light of annihilation, his bloodline's secret art was greatly weakened, and he was severely injured. Boom! The two destructive and tyrannical energies collided, and the surrounding water turned into a vacuum. Blade of purple destruction. The tempest wings on Zhao Feng's back fluttered, and a dark purple light blade as thin as a cicada's wing appeared in his hand. Puff! Crackle! The two figures clashed over a dozen times at lightning speed on the steps. When Qin Yilin and Jiang Fan charged over, Tu Jising's body was covered in a few bloody and scorched marks. Run! Tu Jising was terrified. Under the wings of wind and lightning, Zhao Feng's speed and mobility were superior. Furthermore, Zhao Feng's defense was too strong, and his bloodline was compatible with the underwater world. He was undefeatable. Chase! Zhao Feng chased Tu Jising all the way to the first floor of the Mermaid Divine Palace. At a certain moment. Crack! The wings of wind and lightning on Zhao Feng's back fluttered, and he felt as if he had broken through the restrictions of space. In a flash, the wings of wind and lightning closed in on Tu Jising. Swoosh! The blade of purple destruction flashed and cut off one of Tu Jising's arms. Arg! Tu Jising screamed. He even burned his true yuan and charged out of the Mermaid Divine Palace like a blazing beam of light. My wings of wind and lightning have barely touched the surface of space. Zhao Feng experienced the feeling of breaking through the restrictions of space. After all, Zhao Feng hadn't comprehended the true essence of the wings of wind and lightning yet. The true wings of wind and lightning had powerful lightning wing combat techniques and incredible abilities, such as traveling 10,000 miles in an instant. That Tu Jising won't be a threat for the next 10 days. Zhao Feng sent Tu Jising off with his eyes. He didn't have any trustworthy friends in the demigod Forgotten Garden, so he needed to conserve his strength. Whoosh! Tu Jising burned his true yuan and turned into a ball of demonic flames that flew out of the Mermaid Kingdom. So fast! Secretly, the Mermaid King was quite surprised. His divine sense couldn't enter the Mermaid Divine Palace. From the looks of it, almost all of Tu Jising's group had been killed. Tu Jising, who had managed to escape, was heavily injured and had lost an arm. This Zhao Feng is so terrifying. Looks like I'll have to ask Meng Shi for help. However, she's currently sweeping through the 100-flower garden and collecting countless treasures. Tu Jising thought. Meng Shi was proud. She had the bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races, and her master was a mystic light realm sacred lord. Senior Marshal Brother Tuesday, a warm voice sounded from above. Who is it? Tu Jising jumped up in fright. Just as he reacted, a slender and fair hand pressed down on his shoulder. It's you. A warm youth next to Tu Jising had a warm smile on his face. Sai. Tu Jising's entire body hurt, and his bloodline and true yuan started to tremble. All of his power was restricted. How is this possible? Tu Jising couldn't believe it. They were both at the late-stage Great Origin Core realm. That sunny young man had easily sealed him with a single hand. He couldn't fight back at all. Furthermore, Tu Jusing's soul and bloodline started to tremble in fear. Junior Marshal Brother Wen, the situation is like this. Tu Jusing told him what had happened in the Mermaid Divine Palace with respect and fear. He didn't dare to fight back in front of the warm youth, and he submitted from the bottom of his heart. After all, the difference in strength between the two was too big. At the same time, the Mermaid King's divine sense was slightly surprised. This seemingly harmless, sunny youth actually had such a powerful strength. Suddenly, the warm youth looked up. "King, why have you been watching for so long?" When the divine sense of the king in the air suddenly released a powerful magnificent power. "King, could it be?" Tu Jusing's expression changed dramatically. The warm youth looked up expressionlessly. "Human, we might have a chance to work together." The Mermaid King's voice sounded next to the warm youth's ear. "What's wrong that even a king can't solve?" "Why should I believe you?" the warm youth said. Mermaid Divine Palace, Underground Wine Cellar, Qin Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company were still trying to obtain the Immortal Springs wine, and they even had their eyes on the wine in the cabinets. "I've obtained the Immortal Springs wine, the Illusion God wine, the Dragon Flame wine, and the Lightning Cloud wine." Zhao Feng stopped. He needed to conserve more yuan qi in order to deal with the pursuit of death. This was because he couldn't get rid of the death guards. Zhao Feng found a corner and sat down. The mermaid princess and the golden skeleton stood on his left and right. The little thieving cat sat on Zhao Feng's shoulder and hiccuped. Firstly, Zhao Feng took a small sip of the Immortal Springs wine. The Immortal Springs wine melted in his mouth and merged into his body. The true yuan within Zhao Feng's body instantly started to surge, and his life force rose dramatically. What was even more unique was that this power was extremely gentle, as if it was the blessing of the Mother of Life. Even a mortal kid could absorb a mouthful of the fountain of unaging and be reborn, enjoying a lifespan of 1,000 years. Zhao Feng's cultivation was increasing at a visible rate. Even a mortal can turn into a true spirit realm cultivator after drinking a mouthful of the Immortal Springs wine and live for 1,000 years. Zhao Feng felt how heaven-defying the Immortal Springs wine was. At the bottom of the cultivation world, every increase in level was incomparably difficult. However, for the demigods at the top of the Fan Universe's pyramid, it was extremely easy. However, Zhao Feng believed that increasing one's strength step by step was the most reliable and had the most potential. In just a short while, Zhao Feng had drunk 2 or 3 mouthfuls of the Immortal Springs wine. His true yuan had increased by leaps and bounds, and he was close to the peak small origin core realm. After all, a crystal core had already formed within Zhao Feng's body, and he could absorb the Immortal Springs wine's energy to the maximum. After I completely absorb the Immortal Springs wine's energy, my state of existence won't be weaker than a king's. My cultivation will be close to the great origin core realm. Zhao Feng closed his eyes and felt the change in his state of existence. The change wasn't very obvious. This was because Zhao Feng's state of existence was close to that of a king with the help of the ancient dream realm aura, the heart blood essence, and the purple-scaled grass. On the other hand, the Immortal Springs wine was only useful for those below the void god realm. It had no practical use for kings. Furthermore, the 1,000-year increase in lifespan couldn't be stacked. Zhao Feng drank 2 or 3 mouthfuls and waited for his body to completely absorb it. We're both using the Immortal Springs wine, but how can Zhao Feng's effect be better than mine? On the other side, Jiang Fan noticed the change in Zhao Feng. He obviously didn't know that Zhao Feng's body had already formed a crystal core. The Great Origin Core realm wasn't a bottleneck for Zhao Feng. All he needed was to accumulate energy. On the other hand, the Immortal Springs wine increased his accumulation speed by thousands of times. Let's try the Illusion God wine. Zhao Feng glanced at Qin Yilin and the others. They were all resting to get rid of the alcohol and wouldn't leave for a while. They had successfully kidnapped the mermaid princess and entered the wine cellar of a demigod. This was a rare opportunity. Instead of fighting with the geniuses of the sacred land outside, it was better to think of a way to get a few demigod wines. That would be better than anything else. Gulp. Zhao Feng tilted his head back and drank a mouthful of the illusion god wine. In that instant, a strong surge of alcohol spread through Zhao Feng's soul consciousness. The illusion god wine was different from other wines in that it targeted the soul. Although it seemed like Zhao Feng drank the illusion god wine, it was actually absorbed by his soul consciousness. A breath later, Zhao Feng's soul consciousness was immersed in a profound realm. He felt that his consciousness was about to break free from his body and merge into the vast space. Pang! 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 The god's spiritual eye gave off a cool feeling that allowed Zhao Feng to maintain a certain level of consciousness while comprehending the illusion god wine. Unknowingly, the effect of Zhao Feng using the illusion god wine was better than normal people. Wave after wave of drunkenness attacked Zhao Feng's soul consciousness. He felt his soul consciousness become lighter and lighter, as if it was going to be blown away by the wind. The power of the god's spiritual eye could only maintain half of Zhao Feng's consciousness. 3 breaths later, the effect of the illusion god wine had reached the maximum. Shua! Zhao Feng felt as if his soul consciousness had broken through the limits of his body and was one with heaven and earth. In that state, Zhao Feng felt as if his every action and thought had become the representative of heaven and earth. He was one with heaven and earth. Within the demigod's wine cellar, the water around Zhao Feng suddenly turned into a vacuum under the effect of an invisible magnificent power. An invisible psychic will connected with that heaven and earth for a brief moment. King intent! Chen Yilin exclaimed as his body shook. He looked toward the blue-haired youth sitting in the corner with his eyes closed. Chapter 653. The illusion god wine was indeed worthy of being one of the legendary treasures of the fan universe. In a short while Zhao Feng was immersed in a profound state of emptiness, and he comprehended the intent of kings. Of course, the effect of the illusion god wine was only temporary, and it didn't truly reach a higher level. As for how much one could comprehend, that would depend on one's comprehension and how long the illusion god wine could last. As for Zhao Feng, he was a little different from other people who consumed the illusion god wine. When normal people used the illusion god wine, over 90% of their consciousness would become hazy and drunk. On the other hand, Zhao Feng, the god's spiritual eye allowed him to keep half of his consciousness. Imperceptibly, his understanding of the Kongming realm became clearer. Furthermore, the god's spiritual eye's learning ability allowed Zhao Feng to touch the level of a void god realm king. Spiritual consciousness, breaking away from the shackles of the physical body, roaming the great void, merging with the heavens and earth, becoming one with them. Zhao Feng suppressed the drunkenness and used every second he had. He found that after his consciousness left his physical body, it had merged with the universe and reached a new level. Zhao Feng's mental energy consciousness could see his body and the shocked expressions of Qin Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company. In an instant, Zhao Feng could use the power of heaven and earth, which surpassed normal cultivators in terms of using heaven-earth yuan qi. This power was the magnificent power that a king could control, and it was centered around one's will. However, Zhao Feng hadn't truly formed his void god realm intent yet, and this magnificent power was still in its infancy. Under this intent, Zhao Feng's ability to absorb heaven-earth yuan qi was thousands of times stronger than before. When under Zhao Feng's control, limitless heaven-earth yuan qi flowed into the crystal core in his body. Even the immortal springs wine was absorbed 10 times faster. In an instant, Zhao Feng's state of existence and true yuan cultivation rose rapidly. Peak small origin core realm. Zhao Feng's intent of kings pushed the absorption of the immortal springs wine and his true yuan to the max. In an instant, Zhao Feng's cultivation had reached the peak small origin core realm. My core has already crystallized. There's no bottleneck to the Great Origin Core realm. Zhao Feng even felt that the Great Origin Core realm was within reach. But at this moment, the effects of the illusion god wine were quickly fading. That kind of abstruse and mysterious state of mind gradually became blurry. Everything was like the moon reflected in the water, about to shatter. Ku. Zhao Feng immediately drank a few mouthfuls of illusory god wine. Whoosh! In an instant, the illusory state of a pavilion in the sky became clear once more. The intent of a king once again surrounded Zhao Feng's body. The power of the immortal spring has been completely absorbed. His state of existence is not much different from a king. Zhao Feng sensed that his state of existence had taken another leap. You should know. He drank 3 mouthfuls of the fountain of youth. An ordinary person would need a year and a half, or even longer, to completely absorb the immortal spring. Zhao Feng, on the other hand, had done it in one go. At this moment, he was like a king, and the heaven-earth yuan qi around him bowed down to him. He could summon the power of heaven and earth with a single thought. Zhao Feng's crystal core was slowly expanding. I already have a crystal core. Even if I break through to the Great Origin Core realm, it won't increase my strength much. Zhao Feng's focus wasn't on increasing his cultivation. The most important thing was his comprehension of king intent. Just now, Zhao Feng had only comprehended a bit from the first mouthful of illusory god wine. A second time. Zhao Feng drank 2 mouthfuls of illusory god wine, and the effects became stronger. This feeling of my consciousness leaving my body is similar to the eye of heaven. Zhao Feng suddenly thought of something. The eye of heaven transference and king intent shared some similarities. Thinking up to there, Zhao Feng circulated his god's spiritual eye to the limit. Shua! In an instant, the range of Zhao Feng's consciousness increased by several times. His king intent expanded and became even more intense. Mermaid Divine Palace. A blue and transparent eye of nothingness was embedded in the world of water, overlooking the Mermaid Divine Palace below. Zhao Feng's heart shook. He didn't know what kind of effect the eye of heaven and king intent would have. However, there was one thing he was sure of. The king intent that Zhao Feng had comprehended was even deeper, and its range was even larger. Weng boom. His spiritual will was in harmony with the higher levels of the heaven and earth space. An invisible force was born. King intent? Who is it? A king divine sense shot through the air. A magnificent power instantly appeared in the world of water, and soul dimension explosions sounded. The owner of this king divine sense was obviously the Mermaid King. It's you. The Mermaid King saw the outline of the eye of heaven and confirmed that it was Zhao Feng's left eye. He was stunned. This brat had comprehended the true king intent. Was this the effect of the illusion god wine? The Mermaid King's magnificent power was shocking, and his mental energy intent was like that of a god. The auras of the 2 king intents clashed. Zhao Feng was instantly suppressed, and his intent almost crumbled. Luckily, the state of the eye of heaven was extremely unique, and it consolidated the intent. The intent went from almost crumbling to consolidating on its own. Unknowingly, Zhao Feng's control over this intent rose to another level. So, the Mermaid King has condensed king intent, which is why his every breath and action is able to become one with heaven and earth. Through the eye of heaven, Zhao Feng could sense the Mermaid King's king intent. Zhao Feng found the crux of the problem. That was the void god realm intent. Compress that intent to the limit and brand it with your consciousness, forming a king's will. Zhao Feng's heart became clear. However, theories were just theories. In order to do this, one needed to have a high soul dimension and mental energy intent. With the help of the illusion god wine and the eye of heaven, Zhao Feng now had a high level of mental energy intent. Next was the soul dimension. Zhao Feng barely met this requirement, and it was built on the foundation of the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. Thinking up to there, Zhao Feng quickly circulated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and condensed his mental energy to the maximum. He fused with heaven and earth and started to refine and imprint this level. It was extremely difficult to do this. However, it wasn't hard for Zhao Feng to do it. Don't forget that his god's spiritual eye had the ability to copy. Boom! The Mermaid King's magnificent power suppressed heaven and earth, and the soul dimension started to shake. Humph! Without the will of a king, even if you temporarily reach this realm, it will be like a moon in the water, unable to last long. The Mermaid King snickered coldly. However, right at this moment, Wang boom! The eye of heaven was surrounded by the magnificent power of a king, and an intent condensed in the center. How is this possible? The Mermaid King exclaimed. Although the king intent was still weak, it was extremely agile, as if it had been refined by dozens of intents. Hee, thank you, Mermaid King. A new divine intent floated around the eye of heaven. Without the Mermaid King's live demonstration, Zhao Feng wouldn't have been able to form king intent. As expected, after refining his king intent, Zhao Feng could easily control the intent of a king with just a thought. His will was imprinted with his comprehension of the king intent realm. The effects of the illusion god wine started to fade. Zhao Feng's mind became clearer, but the king intent didn't fade much. Damned humans! The Mermaid King's enraged roar shook the heavens and earth. The magnificent power of a king caused the water around them to freeze, and the bodies of the water race seemed to be locked down. It's useless. A new king intent merged with heaven and earth and summoned a surge of magnificent power from the void god realm. The magnificent power of the Mermaid King wasn't able to restrict Zhao Feng, it could only suppress him slightly. Shwa! The eye of heaven suddenly disappeared from the air above the Mermaid Divine Palace. In the underground wine cellar, Zhao Feng opened his eyes, and a smile appeared on his face as he put away the remaining half of the illusion god wine. With a thought, Zhao Feng entered a state where he was one with heaven and earth. The intent that he formed passed through both the physical and mental energy dimensions and created a surge of magnificent power. However, after leaving the eye of heaven state, Zhao Feng's king intent dropped by half. Even so, I still have the intent and intent of a half-step king, which surpasses normal half-step kings and is close to a king. Zhao Feng wasn't surprised. After all, he was only able to form the king intent when he was in the eye of heaven state. Half-step king intent. Chen Yilin and the others felt a formless power pressing down on them, and their bodies were under immense pressure. Apart from Chen Yilin and Jiang Fan, everyone else's consciousness and bodies seemed to be locked down. This isn't a normal half-step king intent. Chen Yilin's heart shook. Zhao Feng's half-step king intent contained a void god realm intent that was extremely strong. Normal half-step kings could only form intent in the soul dimension, but they weren't able to form such a magnificent power. In the demigod Forgotten Garden, my intent was suppressed by the demigod intent. Zhao Feng murmured. After reaching a whole new level, he felt how terrifying the demigod intent was. If it was said that his intent was a small spring, then the demigod intent was an ocean. The illusion god wine has such a shocking effect. Chen Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company had respectful and envious expressions. They didn't know that with the help of the god's spiritual eye and the eye of heaven, Zhao Feng was able to unleash the full effect of the illusion god wine. On top of that, the Mermaid King had also given a demonstration. If another genius drank the same amount of illusion god wine, the effect wouldn't even be 1/10 of what Zhao Feng had. Under normal circumstances, my intent is at the level of a half-step king. Let's try the eye of heaven. Zhao Feng's heart moved. Shwa! Zhao Feng's intent surpassed the limits of his physical body, and his vision reached the sky above the Mermaid Divine Palace. The range of the eye of heaven became bigger and bigger. When a blue and transparent eye of nothingness merged into the clouds above Purple Smoke Lake. A magnificent power appeared around the eye of heaven, and all the yuan qi in heaven and earth seemed to freeze. Zhao Feng's intent had reached the level of a low-tier king. As expected, I have true king intent when I use the Eye of Heaven. Zhao Feng felt extremely comfortable, and he felt as if he was a king looking down on the world. A single thought from a king's will contained boundless might that could kill and imprison ordinary sovereigns and high lords. Chapter 654. Purple Smoke Lake. The warm youth floated above the water and suddenly raised his head. King intent? Solemnness appeared on Wen Luoan's face for the first time. In the sky above, the Eye of Heaven looked down at the entire Purple Smoke Lake. All the creatures in the nearby waters felt a sense of pressure on their souls. That Zhao Feng should be able to temporarily maintain his king intent with the help of the illusion god wine. His soul and cultivation haven't reached the king level yet. The warm youth regained his calmness. As long as it wasn't a true king, he didn't put anyone in his eyes. If it weren't for the existence of the Mermaid King, he would have killed his way into the Mermaid Divine Palace already. Human, if you had teamed up with me earlier, that Zhao Feng wouldn't have been able to comprehend king intent. The roar of the Mermaid King sounded. The sunny youth stood where he was, indifferent. He didn't trust anyone in the demigod Forgotten Garden, let alone a non-human king. Shwa! The Eye of Heaven disappeared from the sky above the Purple Smoke Lake. Why don't I use this chance to see what's going on in the demigod Forgotten Garden? Zhao Feng murmured. The Eye of Heaven's biggest ability was its ability to pass through space. However, this ability was greatly limited in the demigod Forgotten Garden. However, with the Eye of Heaven, Zhao Feng had the intent of a beginning stage king, and his pressure on the demigod Forgotten Garden increased dramatically. In the next instant, on the 7th floor of the 10,000 treasure tower in the demigod Forgotten Garden, more than a dozen treasures with brilliant lights floated in the air. The powerful aura of the treasures was enough to shock a king. Who dares to stop me? Nan Gongsheng stood proudly as a silver light shone from his body. A surge of king intent summoned the magnificent power of the void god realm and pushed aside the geniuses of the sacred lands. The soul dimension started to shake. There were 70 to 80 geniuses from the sacred lands participating. However, Nan Gongsheng fought against the geniuses of the sacred lands by himself, and he seemed extremely calm. We can't let Nan Gongsheng get the Qiankuan sword. If he gets it, who in the sacred land can fight him? The universe sword, the skylock bow, and the myriad directions seal. These are all inheritance saint weapons that have the ability to stabilize the universe. Their grades are close to or comparable to heaven rank. If any of them were to fall into the hands of the outside world, it might affect the situation in the Saint Land. The Myriad Treasure Tower's 7th floor had many geniuses. The geniuses who dared to compete in the Myriad Treasure Tower were all the best among the Holy Land's true inheritances. The geniuses here were much stronger than those at Purple Smoke Lake. However, the 10-odd treasures above were extremely difficult to obtain. Firstly, one had to rely on strength. Secondly, one had to try to communicate with the divine weapon. Even with Nan Gongsheng's strength, he could barely form a connection with the Qiankuan sword. Whoosh! Right at this moment, a translucent blue eye of nothingness appeared on the 7th floor of the Myriad Treasure Tower. King's will. Nan Gongsheng immediately sensed it, and a powerful surge of king intent appeared from his body. In terms of cultivation, Nan Gongsheng was a half-step king, but he had the will of a king. It was just that his cultivation base was slightly weaker than a king's. Boom! Zhao Feng's king intent shook faintly, and it was instantly suppressed. He had formed his king intent in a hurry, so there was a big difference between him and Nan Gongsheng in terms of foundation. Just as Zhao Feng was about to leave, when among the treasures, one of the ancient bows let out a buzzing sound, and the glowing light on its surface suddenly dimmed. Zhao Feng and the ancient bow formed a mysterious connection. Sky-locking bow. The geniuses of the sacred land below exclaimed. These treasures and weapons were all strengthened by the demigod intent, so they couldn't be taken by force. From the looks of it, the sky-locking bow was about to break free from the demigod intent. If you're willing, then come with me. A strong surge of eye bloodline power suddenly appeared from the eye of heaven. Whoosh! A ripple of eye bloodline power formed a whirlpool that engulfed the sky-locking bow. Whoosh! The sky-locking bow, one of the strongest inheritance sacred weapons on the 7th floor of the Myriad Treasure Tower, disappeared. Who is it that actually crossed the sky and took away the skylock bow? The geniuses of the sacred land were all tongue-tied. The Myriad Treasure Tower had a total of 9 floors, and one needed to put in a lot of effort and teamwork to reach each floor. In history, the highest record was the 7th floor. The speed this time could be said to have broken the historical record. All of this was because of the heaven-defying genius of the sacred land, Nan Gongsheng. Preposterous. Nan Gongsheng stood proudly with his hands behind his back. He was slightly angry. He had tried for a long time, but he still couldn't obtain the Qianquan sword. How could the genius who used the spatial technique obtain the sky-locking bow so easily? That eye looks like. Senior Marshal Brother Nan, Dong Wenjian, and company looked at each other. Whoosh! The eye of heaven disappeared from the 10,000 treasure tower. In reality, Zhao Feng didn't plan to compete with the Myriad Treasure Tower. Nan Gongsheng's battle power made him wary. Zhao Feng had only formed half-step king intent. Apart from his state of existence and body, he was much weaker than a king. In the biggest area of the demigod Forgotten Garden, this place was filled with plants and trees, and it also contained the most treasures in the demigod Forgotten Garden. 100-Flower Garden. An eye of heaven and earth appeared in the air above the garden. Zhao Feng couldn't help but sigh. In terms of resources, the 100-Flower Garden was several times more than the Purple Smoke Lake. Of course. This place was far more dangerous than the Purple Smoke Lake. Looking down, Zhao Feng soon sensed the auras of several king-level beasts. Zhao Feng was stunned when his gaze locked onto a certain place. A magnificent power of a king covered everything within half a mile of the 100-Flower Garden. A unicorn with purple scales all over its body was covered in purple electric flames, and it easily slaughtered a nearby demonic beast tribe. The strength of this beast tribe was on par with Zhao Feng's army. It was hard to imagine that the horse-sized purple-scaled unicorn was a king-level beast. That wasn't the main point. What was even more unbelievable was that, sitting on the back of the purple unicorn was a beautiful girl with long black hair that covered the ground. The young girl wore a pleated blue dress that was spotless. Her delicate face was like jade, and her eyes were like illusory stars. She seemed to be in a dream. Meng Shi. Zhao Feng's heart shook. This girl was the prodigy of the Thousand Darkness Sacred Clan, Meng Shi. Meng Shi held a purple-scaled jade horn in her hand and controlled the king-level unicorn she was sitting on. Controlling a king-level beast? How did she do that? Zhao Feng couldn't believe it. He originally thought that Nan Gongsheng's strength was monstrous. He didn't expect Meng Shi to have such a killing move. Meng Shi's strength was already one of the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land, on par with Nan Gongsheng. And now, she controlled a single-horned beast, which was enough to sweep through the 100-Flower Garden and plunder countless rare treasures. King intent? Meng Shi sensed something. She had a mysterious soul-type bloodline that came from the 10,000 ancient races. She wasn't scared of the king intent. Meng Shi and the unicorn looked at the sky at the same time. However, the eye of heaven only appeared for an instant before disappearing. The instant after it disappeared, boom. The sky started to shake, and a flaming horn of purple lightning appeared where the eye of heaven had disappeared. Your reaction is pretty fast. Meng Shi snickered coldly as her eyes twinkled. She had a certain impression of the eye of heaven. As his gaze left the 100-Flower Garden, Zhao Feng's heart shook. Although his intent had increased and he had formed half-step king intent, the difference between him and Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi was still quite big. The 10,000 Treasure Tower and the 100-Flower Garden are basically dominated by Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi. They'll definitely enter the other areas of the demigod Forgotten Garden soon. Zhao Feng thought. Shua. His eye of heaven started to look around once more. Soon. The eye of heaven landed in a quiet palace. Heart-healing palace. Zhao Feng murmured. The heart-healing palace was the place where the owner of the demigod Forgotten Garden used to recover and cultivate. In terms of fortune and treasures, the heart-healing palace couldn't compare to the 10,000 Treasure Tower or the 100-Flower Garden. Even the Purple Smoke Lake couldn't compare. However, no genius would underestimate the heart-healing palace. According to the records, in the history of the demigod Forgotten Garden, there had only been 2 or 3 fortunes in the heart-healing palace. However, these 2 or 3 fortunes could be said to have changed fate. One of them, a genius from a sacred land, merged a profound intent into an ancient tree in the heart-healing palace, and its effect far surpassed the illusion god wine. After that genius comprehended a heaven-grade cultivation technique and formed a unique king intent. He was unrivaled in his generation and became a king in just a few years. Heart-healing palace, next to a small pond, 5 or 6 geniuses from the sacred land gathered together. What a terrifying aura. What is that? The geniuses from the sacred land stared at the smelly pond that was covered in rotten leaves. The pond was immeasurably deep. The tremendous pressure that made his bloodline tremble came from the lake. The geniuses from the sacred land approached step by step. However, with every step he took, he had to bear a magnificent and boundless pressure. What is it? The geniuses couldn't stand still when they were 10 meters away from the pond. When a layer of golden blood-colored light suddenly appeared in the pond. Plop! Plop! The 2 geniuses from the sacred land who were closest to the pond knelt on the ground. That's... The faces of the geniuses from the sacred land went red, and they felt as if their hearts were about to explode. Slowly, a drop of faint golden blood appeared on the surface of the pond. A drop of blood. The 5 or 6 geniuses from the sacred land were unable to withstand the terrifying pressure, and they all knelt on the ground as if they were worshipping a god. Wah! Wah! 2 of them vomited blood and died. Could it be the blood of a demigod? Demigod's blood. The drop of blood contained a pressure that surpassed even kings. Crack! The heart of another genius from the sacred land exploded. Quick, retreat! Even though the owner of the demigod's blood has died, the power contained within it is still enough to crush all living beings. The remaining 3 started to bleed from their orifices and crawled on the ground like rats. Heart-nurturing palace. Demigod's blood? An eye of emptiness appeared in the air above the pond. Even though the eye of emptiness contained the will of a king, it still made their hearts jump when it looked down at the demigod's blood. Dodge! The eye of emptiness disappeared from the sky above the heart-nurturing palace. Demigod wine cellar, Shua. Zhao Feng let out a long breath as shock appeared on his face. With his soul strength and king intent, he could use the eye of heaven for a long time. In just 20 breaths, Zhao Feng looked down at the important areas of the demigod Forgotten Garden. However, he didn't realize that there were a few strands of faint purple mixed in his blue hair. Chapter 655. Demigod Wine Cellar, Qin Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company looked at Zhao Feng with complicated expressions. In just a short while, they had witnessed Zhao Feng's growth. He had formed half-step king intent and showed signs of magnificent power when he wasn't even at the Great Origin Core realm. Zhao Feng had successfully replicated the miraculous path of that genius from the sacred land several thousand years ago. From the purple-scaled grass to the mermaid tears, the immortal springs wine, and the illusion god wine, Zhao Feng had grasped and used the fortune in the purple smoke lake to its fullest. The most important thing was, none of this was due to luck. Back then, the genius from the sacred land had obtained the immortal springs wine and the illusion god wine mostly due to luck. However, Zhao Feng had clearly planned everything out beforehand. Every step he took was like a lotus, and everything was under his control. The purple smoke lake has been successfully conquered. Zhao Feng was extremely satisfied. Before the demigod Forgotten Garden opened, he had studied the information about the demigod Forgotten Garden and confirmed that the purple smoke lake was the most suitable for him. It could be said that, over 90% of the fortune in the purple smoke lake had been taken by Zhao Feng. If it weren't for the mermaid's tears, which could cleanse and purify my soul, I wouldn't have been able to comprehend king intent so smoothly. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. There were too many factors involved in comprehending the intent of a king. This included the mermaid tears, the illusion god wine, the 10,000 divine thoughts technique, and the god's spiritual eye. From this, one could see that any king in heaven and earth had a strong foundation and fortune. Within the dimension of his left eye, the lake of eye bloodline power had expanded to 900 yards, and it was getting closer and closer to 100 yards. Zhao Feng suddenly realized that there was a faint purple glow in the center of the eye bloodline power lake. Zhao Feng's heart shook. According to his instincts, the god's spiritual eye would evolve as soon as the lake of eye bloodline power reached 100 yards. Once the god's spiritual eye starts to evolve, I might fall into a deep sleep like before. Zhao Feng's eyes twinkled. In other words, at the moment, it wasn't suitable for his soul strength to increase. The demigod Forgotten Garden was filled with danger, and it would only be open for half a month. Comprehending king intent and maintaining complete king intent while in the eye of heaven state greatly increased the strength of Zhao Feng's soul. With this thought in mind, Zhao Feng tried to use the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. Whoosh! Zhao Feng's telepathic thoughts were instantly divided into 70 to 80 strands, which was close to the level of one thought into 100. Comprehending the king's intent had a significant effect on Zhao Feng's soul. He sat cross-legged on the spot for a moment. Zhao Feng suddenly thought of something, and an ancient bow appeared in his hand. The ancient bow was simple and dark silver in color. Its surface was engraved with mysterious hollowed-out inscriptions, and the bowstring glowed with a cold golden luster. The moment the bow appeared, it created an astonishing pressure. A cold and sharp aura came from the bowstring, as if it could penetrate through space. The true inheritors present felt a chill in their hearts. Everyone's divine weapons trembled in fear. That bow, Qin Yilin and company were unable to look directly at the bow. They felt a suffocating pressure. Even Zhao Feng felt a heavy feeling when holding the bow. Even his half-step king intent started to tremble. The sky-locking bow. Qin Yilin blurted out, "Isn't that the inheritance sacred weapon from the 10,000 treasure tower?" Jiang Fan and company were speechless. The sky-locking bow was a famous inheritance sacred weapon in the entire Tsang Ocean. In this world, almost every inheritance sacred weapon had been nurtured and refined by a mystic light realm sacred lord. Normal inheritance sacred weapons are at least peak-tier earth grade, and some are even at the heaven grade. Waves appeared in the hearts of Qin Yilin and company. How did Zhao Feng suddenly obtain the sky-locking bow after staying in the demigod's wine cellar? Whoosh! Zhao Feng quickly put the sky-locking bow away. With his current strength, it would be very difficult for him to control the sky-locking bow. Furthermore, he hadn't fully obtained the recognition of the sky-locking bow and refined it yet. Senior Marshal Brother Chen, you seem to know something about this bow. Zhao Feng looked over. Qin Yilin sucked in a breath of air and forced himself to calm down. He answered, "Legend has it that this sky-locking bow is a top-notch saint artifact among bow-type divine weapons. Its attack has the power to break through space barriers and even lock onto space and souls. There's a rumor that targets locked onto by the sky-locking bow can't dodge. Even if they merge with heaven and earth and break through space, they can still be pierced through." Hearing that, Zhao Feng couldn't help but take in a cold breath. Targets locked onto by the sky-locking bow can't dodge. This sounded terrifying. However, apparently, the requirements to use the sky-locking bow are extremely high. One of them is that the user must have a strong soul talent, spatial talent, or a special eye bloodline. Qin Yilin continued. Hearing that, Zhao Feng couldn't help but start to think. There was a reason why the sky-locking bow chose him. Zhao Feng's eye bloodline leaned towards the soul, and it had skills such as spatial movement and the eye of heaven. It was indeed very suitable for the sky-locking bow. Of course, Zhao Feng wouldn't be able to control this inheritance sacred weapon in a short amount of time, so he could only research it after leaving the demigod Forgotten Garden. Half the time it took to make tea later, Zhao Feng's eye bloodline power started to recover. After comprehending the king's intent, the power of his soul and his recovery ability had become stronger. Everyone, I'm about to leave the purple smoke lake. Zhao Feng stood up and suggested. Through the eye of heaven, Zhao Feng had a rough understanding of the demigod Forgotten Garden. My next destination should be the heart-healing palace. Zhao Feng thought in his heart. The demigod's blood seemed to have appeared in the heart-healing palace. One had to know that the previous owner of the demigod Forgotten Garden had taken half a step into the realm of gods. A drop of the demigod's blood contained immeasurable divine power, and it was better than any treasure for cultivators of the future. Even monarchs and emperors would flock to it. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, why are you in such a rush to leave? Qin Yilin's expression changed dramatically. Even Jiang Fan's heart clenched. In reality, they didn't want to leave the demigod wine cellar so easily. Especially the illusionary god wine, its bewitching power was too great. However, they couldn't leave Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng has controlled the mermaid princess. Once he leaves, we can't stay. Everyone's hearts were as clear as a mirror. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, you've already comprehended king intent and formed half-step king intent. Can you help us obtain the illusion god wine? Qin Yilin asked. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed as he started to think. The place where the illusion god wine used to be in the crystal cabinet was no longer there. However, the illusion god wine would still appear in the same place. Under the nervous gazes of Qin Yilin and company, Zhao Feng finally spoke, I can help, but you have to agree to a request. What request? Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, just say it. Qin Yilin and the others were excited as they became more spirited. They were afraid that Zhao Feng wouldn't agree. After we leave the Mermaid Divine Palace, you need to help me fight against a strong enemy. Zhao Feng said. Strong enemy? Qin Yilin and Jiang Fan looked at each other and were surprised. What kind of enemy would make Zhao Feng, who had comprehended king intent, feel troubled? Could it be the Mermaid King? It's not the Mermaid King. Zhao Feng immediately rejected this possibility. Shua. With a thought, the image of a warm youth appeared where Zhao Feng was. So, it's him. Qin Yilin and the others also had some impression of the sunny youth, Wen Luan. After all, when Luan's cultivation had reached the Great Origin Core realm, and before the demonic Forgotten Garden was opened, some people estimated that his strength could be ranked among the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land. We're from the same clan, so it's only right for us to help Junior Marshal Brother Zhao. That's right. We'll do our best. Everyone nodded their heads. Good. Zhao Feng smiled faintly. If Qin Yilin and company were willing to help him fight against a strong enemy, then it was understandable for him to help them obtain some illusion god wine to increase their strength. Next, with Zhao Feng's help, everyone worked together and obtained a total of 3 cups of illusion god wine. Among them, Zhao Feng obtained 1 cup for himself, and the other 2 were given to Qin Yilin and company. The demigod wine cellar could only brew a certain amount of illusion god wine each day. If they exceeded that amount, they would have to wait another day. Thank you, Junior Marshal Brother Zhao. Qin Yilin and Jiang Fan were extremely grateful. They were extremely excited to obtain the illusion god wine. The two sighed. Thinking back to the first time they met Zhao Feng, they thought that they wouldn't be able to interact with him. However, they didn't expect Zhao Feng to help them obtain the illusion god wine. The illusion god wine could, to a certain extent, change their fate for the next 100 years. Chen Yilin and Jiang Fan shared one of the remaining 2 cups of illusion god wine, and the other was given to the others. Each cup could be drunk in 3 to 4 mouthfuls. Zhao Feng was also paying attention to everyone as they drank the illusion god wine. He wanted to see how effective the illusion god wine would be if these people drank it. Zhao Feng guessed that Chen Yilin's soul and intent were the strongest, so his chance of comprehending king intent was higher. His cultivation was also the highest amongst them. As expected, a surge of king intent appeared from Chen Yilin's body, and it was stronger than the other geniuses. Of course, it was much weaker than what Zhao Feng had done. Chen Yilin drank a total of 2 mouthfuls of illusion god wine and comprehended some king intent. He sat down for a long time. The intent of a half-step king started to condense on Chen Yilin's body, although it wasn't even half as strong as Zhao Feng's. Congratulations, senior martial brother Chen. Zhao Feng wasn't surprised and smiled. I've tried to comprehend king intent over the past year, but I only managed to scratch the surface. I didn't think that I would be able to condense half-step king intent today. Chen Yilin's face was filled with joy, gratitude, and even joy. Without the illusion god wine, he wouldn't have been able to condense half-step king intent within 10 years. Entering the purple smoke lake this time, he first comprehended the mermaid tears, then drank the illusion god wine. Adding on his previous foundation, he was fortunate enough to form the half-step king mentality. Within the wine cellar apart from Chen Yilin, the other core disciples had only comprehended the surface of king intent. Among them, Jiang Fan's mental energy intent had reached the Great Origin Core realm, but it was still a distance away from half-step king intent. The others had also increased in terms of intent. Zhao Feng nodded his head. The overall strength of the entire team had increased. Jiang Fan's strength was enough to reach the top 10 geniuses of the Sacred Land. Chen Yilin's ranking in the top 10 geniuses of the Sacred Land would probably increase. Junior martial brother Zhao, will follow your lead from now on. Chen Yilin said in a solemn tone. Chapter 656. At this moment, Zhao Feng's strength won everyone's respect and gratitude. If it wasn't for Zhao Feng, they wouldn't have obtained so much from this trip. Let's go. Zhao Feng told the mermaid princess to continue leading the way. After returning to the first floor of the Mermaid Divine Palace, Zhao Feng sensed that his cultivation had reached the peak stage of the small origin core realm and was close to the Sovereign Lord level. This was mainly because of the Immortal Springs wine and his king intent. Jiang Fan's cultivation had also increased, and he was close to the peak stage of the small origin core realm. Human. A surge of king magnificent power condensed at the entrance of the Mermaid Divine Palace. Everyone's thoughts seemed to be restricted, and they found it hard to breathe. Only Zhao Feng and Chen Yilin could resist this intent. Jiang Fan was also able to withstand it. Mermaid King, I won't be taking your daughter with me. But before we leave the Mermaid Kingdom, you need to ensure our safety. Zhao Feng said. After that, he ordered the Mermaid Princess to stay near the Mermaid Divine Palace. Master. The Mermaid Princess' eyes were filled with unwillingness. This wasn't just the effect of the Dark Heart Seal, it was a feeling of love. Females always admired the strong. The Mermaid Princess was especially strong in this regard. Father, please let me leave with Master. The Mermaid Princess begged. There wasn't a single male in the Mermaid Kingdom that could make her love him. You. The Mermaid King hovered in the air above the Divine Palace. She was furious, as if she had expected better from them. He viciously stared at Zhao Feng, a complicated and somewhat helpless expression on his face. This human had completely enslaved the Mermaid Princess, both physically and mentally. At this moment in time, even if Zhao Feng removed the dark heart seal, it might not be able to dissolve the mermaid princess' love. Unfortunately, he's a human. The Mermaid King admired Zhao Feng's potential and strength from the bottom of his heart. Zhao Feng glanced at the mermaid princess and shook his head. I can't take you with me. I'll remove the dark heart seal after we leave the purple smoke lake. Why? The mermaid princess was heartbroken. In terms of looks, I'm not inferior to you human beauties. My soul talent complements yours. Moreover, once the mermaid race becomes a king, they can reconstruct their physical bodies and completely transform into a human's body. I already have a wife. With that, Zhao Feng led Chen Yilin and the others to swim towards the surface. The mermaid princess was slightly startled upon hearing this. Zhao Feng already had a wife, so she couldn't do anything about it. Fei-er. The mermaid king heaved a long sigh and put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Humph. Wait for me to dispel that forbidden soul technique, then I'll capture that brat and make him your manservant. The mermaid king snorted coldly. The mermaid clan was born with a certain innate soul talent, especially the mermaid royal family. Furthermore, the mermaid king was a void god realm king. However, when his divine sense entered his daughter's soul, his expression changed. Zhao Feng's dark heart seal was something that even he, a king, couldn't do anything about in a short amount of time. The dark heart seal came from the Emperor of Death's dark eye secret technique, and normal kings couldn't do anything about it. On the surface of the lake, whoosh! Whoosh! Zhao Feng's army quickly gathered at the edge of the mermaid kingdom. Tentacled water monsters, giant water pythons, ancient crocodiles, many powerful beasts of the mermaid race advanced. Chen Yilin and company also stood on the backs of beasts of the mermaid race. The beasts of the mermaid race moved aside wherever they passed. Zhao Feng and Chen Yilin had both condensed half-step king intent, which was enough to scare the beasts of the mermaid race. Zhao Feng stood with his hands behind his back and looked into the distance. More than a dozen miles away, the warm youth's expression changed slightly as he stood on the surface of the water. Zhao Feng's army was about to close in. Zhao Feng and those from the mystic true sacred clan have become much stronger. One of them even has a 10,000 ancient races bloodline. Wen Luan's expression became solemn. He originally thought that even if Zhao Feng and company could leave the mermaid kingdom, most of them would be injured or dead, and their strength would drop. However, to his surprise, the strength of this group of people was much stronger than he had imagined. They had all grown stronger. Furthermore, the mermaid king's divine sense was still lingering in the air. If I want to kill Zhao Feng, I'll have to fight against the entire group, and there's also an unpredictable king hiding behind the scenes. Wen Luan's eyes twinkled. Even if the mermaid king didn't do anything, he wasn't 100% confident. I'm only 70% confident. This isn't the best time to kill Zhao Feng. If I miss one or two people, I'll be hunted down by the upper echelon of the mystic true sacred clan after the Forgotten Garden closes. The warm youth finally sighed after analyzing the situation. Shwa! With a flash, the warm youth flew into the sky. Due to various reasons, he gave up on killing Zhao Feng. So fast. This Wen Luan can fly in the Forgotten Garden. Zhao Feng was shocked. Wen Luan's speed far surpassed Zhao Feng's when he didn't use the wings of wind and lightning. Furthermore, even Chen Yilin wasn't able to fly in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Wen Luan didn't do anything. He's probably worried about the Mermaid King, Chen Yilin, Jiang Fan, and the army of the mermaids. Zhao Feng let out a sigh of relief. Instinct told him that Wen Luan would be a strong opponent, and he felt a sense of danger. An hour later, Zhao Feng and company left the Purple Smoke Lake. Release. Zhao Feng released the Dark Heart Seal from the Mermaid Princess through the god's spiritual eye. At the same time, the Mermaid Princess moaned in front of the Mermaid Divine Palace and looked in a certain direction with a hint of unwillingness. That human is keeping his promise. The Mermaid King let out a breath. He didn't chase after Zhao Feng. Instead, he checked on his daughter's situation. Furthermore, the mermaid race was used to the Purple Smoke Lake and wasn't used to the other areas of the demigod Forgotten Garden. Otherwise, they would be suppressed by the demigod intent. On the shore of the Purple Smoke Lake, Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, where are we going next? A core disciple said eagerly. On this journey, Zhao Feng's strength had won everyone's respect. They believed that they would have good gains if they followed Zhao Feng. Heart-nurturing palace. Zhao Feng spat out 3 words. Heart-nurturing palace. Chen Yilin and company were surprised. They originally thought that Zhao Feng would go to the 100-flower garden or the 10,000 treasure tower. After all, Zhao Feng was strong enough right now, and he could control some strong beasts and spirits. Going to the heart-nurturing palace wouldn't give Zhao Feng much of an advantage. Everyone, you can choose to follow me, or you can choose to go your separate ways. What you get from now on will depend on your own ability. Zhao Feng looked at everyone. He had already gotten enough in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Next. The thing that attracted him the most was the demigod's blood. Chen Yilin and company thought about it for a while. From now on, even if they followed Zhao Feng, what they got would depend on their own ability. On the other hand, there were very few fortuitous encounters in the heart-nurturing palace. Finally, after thinking about it, they decided to go to the 10,000 treasure tower and fight for some rare treasures. Some of the rare treasures in the 10,000 treasure tower had the ability to change one's fate, and their effects weren't any weaker than the illusion god wine. Good luck. Zhao Feng wasn't surprised and said goodbye to Chen Yilin and company. Ever since he entered the demigod Forgotten Garden, he had the belief of being a lone ranger. Shua. Zhao Feng's figure sped toward the heart-nurturing palace. The demigod Forgotten Garden had a high level of space, and the pressure was extremely high. Half a day later, Zhao Feng slowly approached the heart-nurturing palace. On the way, he met some geniuses from the sacred land, and some of them were in a sorry state. Zhao Feng sat on a 2-headed blazing horse with 2 dragonfly men following behind him as they floated in the air. The 2-headed flaming horse and the 2 dragonfly people were the new servants that Zhao Feng had enslaved on the ground. Their strength was close to the half-step king realm, and they weren't very big. Their speed wasn't fast enough to cause a commotion. On the way, the geniuses from the other sacred lands were terrified when they saw Zhao Feng's mount and the 2 dragonfly people servants. Heart-nurturing palace. When Zhao Feng reached his destination, he found that there were many geniuses gathered nearby. Plop. A pale-faced genius from the sacred land rolled out of the heart-nurturing palace. The power contained in the demigod's blood is too terrifying. No one has been able to get within 10 yards of the god's blood. The geniuses from the sacred land discussed in groups of 3 to 5 outside the heart-nurturing palace. Suddenly, the crowd went silent, and the terrifying auras of a few powerful exotic beasts and races rushed over. Who's that? He managed to tame a rare dragonfly person. The dragonfly man is astonishingly fast and nimble, and its edge is hard to block. It possesses the wind and poison attributes. The geniuses in the heart-nurturing palace were shocked and wary. So, it's him. Some of these people recognized Zhao Feng's identity, and some were even disciples of the mystic True Sacred Clan. Everyone tacitly made way for him. Zhao Feng seemed to be very familiar with the place, so he entered the heart-nurturing palace and headed straight for the pond in the corner. Soon later, Zhao Feng arrived at the pond where the demigod's blood was. Some geniuses from the sacred land stood around the pond. These geniuses were all strong, and they were able to resist the aura of the demigod's blood and get closer. Demigod's blood. Zhao Feng's gaze landed on the drop of golden blood that was around the size of a thumb. As expected. As soon as he got close to the pond, Zhao Feng's body felt an unimaginable pressure. This pressure far surpassed the void god realm, and it could crush all beings into dust. A drop of blood has such power. If I can turn it into my own, my bloodline, body, and even my cultivation will increase by leaps and bounds. Zhao Feng was stunned. Even kings and emperors couldn't resist the temptation of the demigod's blood. How can I obtain the demigod's blood? Zhao Feng started to think. Firstly, teleportation was probably impossible. Not only was the demigod's blood powerful, it also had a mysterious connection with the demigod intent. The demigod's blood contained its own spirituality and the power of the demigod, so it was able to repel external forces. Zhao Feng believed that the difficulty of obtaining it was 10 times, no, 100 times harder than obtaining the illusion god wine. When he was 10 yards away, Zhao Feng's every step became extremely difficult as he faced the pressure of the demigod's blood. The closer he got, the more the demigod's divine power would repel him. Suddenly, a genius from the sacred land near the pond screamed. Arg! A male at the peak small origin core realm with a strong bloodline exploded from the pressure of the demigod's blood when he stepped within 10 yards of the demigod. Boom! Blood and flesh flew everywhere, and the shockwave made the nearby geniuses' faces go white. Chapter 657. Seeing the death of the genius from the sacred land, everyone nearby trembled. The area within 100 yards is a forbidden zone. Once one enters, the power of the demigod's blood will increase exponentially. Zhao Feng murmured. The other geniuses in the heart-healing palace also noticed this. Ordinary geniuses of sacred grounds could barely resist the divine power from 100 feet away. Most of the geniuses who died had entered the forbidden zone. There's already so much pressure within 100 yards, but if I get closer, 15 yards, 30 yards, 10 yards, I'll be able to touch the demigod's blood. Zhao Feng couldn't imagine the strongest pressure. He started to think as he looked at the little thieving cat on his shoulder. Meow meow. The little thieving cat waved its hand, expressing that it couldn't do anything, then jumped back into the ancient metal ring. Zhao Feng wasn't surprised. Normal kings might not even be able to block the demigod's blood's strongest power. The little thieving cat was an intelligent and agility-type beast, and it wasn't a beast that focused on physical strength. Demigod's blood, I'm coming. A cold and indifferent voice came from afar. Shua. A black-skinned man with a pair of black-wind demonic wings on his back flew through the air and attracted a layer of black-wind baleful qi. Mo Tianyu. Everyone within the heart-healing palace moved aside. The cultivation of this male had reached the late-stage Great Origin Core realm, and his demonic wings bloodline was extremely unique. The terrifying demonic black wind made everyone unable to breathe. Mo Tianyu, one of the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land, and he comes from the Thousand Darkness Sacred Clan. Information appeared in Zhao Feng's mind. There were 200 to 300 geniuses that entered the demigod Forgotten Garden. Everyone knew that the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land were the best of the best. Isn't Mo Tianyu only at the middle stage Great Origin Core realm? His cultivation and bloodline power have increased dramatically in just a couple days. Some of the geniuses of the sacred land revealed respectful expressions. The core disciples of the Thousand Darkness Sacred Clan revealed joyful expressions. There were many fortunes in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Being one of the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land, Mo Tianyu's demonic wings bloodline allowed him to fly. Shua. The black wind devil wings gently flapped above Zhao Feng and the others' heads, and the Mo Tianyu landed near the pool. Tenjiang Forbidden Zone. Many geniuses held their breaths as their hearts skipped a beat. As for Mo Tianyu, he directly landed in the 10 feet region without any injuries. As expected of the 10 geniuses of the Saint Lands. Each of their foundations and bloodline inheritances are extraordinary. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. This Mo Tianyu had entered the demigod Forgotten Garden, and his power had skyrocketed. Perhaps even 1 or 2 half-step king warriors would not be able to beat him. Ha ha ha. Demigod's blood. Fortunately, I came quickly. Mo Tianyu's face was filled with pride. Among the crowd, there were no other 10 geniuses from the Holy Lands. Faintly, he looked down on everyone present. At this moment, news of the demigod's blood started to spread across the demigod Forgotten Garden. However, many geniuses were still on their way. Mo Tianyu had a special bloodline, the demonic wings. His speed and agility were the best among the 10 geniuses. At the moment, only Mo Tianyu stepped into the 10 feet forbidden zone. His cold gaze swept across the entire area, but he didn't find any formidable opponents. Mo Tianyu's gaze landed on the 2 dragonfly men behind Xiao Feng and paused for a moment. Mo Tianyu had experienced the speed and agility of the dragonfly men in the demigod Forgotten Garden. They were extremely troublesome non-human experts. However, he didn't expect a genius in front of him to be able to tame 2 dragonfly men. His cultivation hasn't even reached the Great Origin Core realm. One has to rely on their bloodline and cultivation to block the power of the demigod's blood. Mental energy isn't very useful. Mo Tianyu faintly glanced over before taking back his gaze. He didn't put Xiao Feng in his eyes at all. At this moment, no true opponents had appeared in the Heart Healing Palace. I'll try to take down the demigod's blood before troublesome people like Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi appear. Mo Tianyu's eyes twinkled. He took a deep breath and circulated his demonic techniques, increasing the defense of his body dramatically. Ta! Ta! Mo Tianyu entered the 10 feet forbidden zone and slowly walked forward. With every step he took, the pressure of the divine power he faced would increase significantly. Even Mo Tianyu found it hard to move forward. Mo Tianyu is the first person to enter the 10 feet forbidden zone and still be able to move forward safely. The geniuses of the sacred land were envious and unwilling. The closer one got to the pond, the higher the chance of obtaining the demigod's blood. Faster! The demigod's blood belongs to me. Mo Tianyu's heart surged. The demigod's blood was almost the blood of a god, and a normal expert could change their fate if they obtained a drop. Even kings and emperors would go crazy for it. 10 feet. Right at this moment, a blue-haired figure stepped into the 10 feet forbidden zone. It's him. Everyone took a closer look and was slightly taken aback. The second person to step into the 10 feet forbidden zone was Xiao Feng. If I come into close contact with the demigod's blood, the power will be unimaginable. Furthermore, I don't know if the demigod's blood has any offensive abilities. Xiao Feng was wary, so he didn't advance rashly. Honestly speaking, he didn't feel too bad about the 10 feet forbidden zone. He had been in the ancient dream realm for a long time, and the pressure he faced was much stronger than the 10 feet forbidden zone. This brat. Mo Tianyu's expression changed when he noticed Xiao Feng. He obviously didn't expect a peak small origin core realm brat to be able to enter the 10 feet forbidden zone. Furthermore, from the looks of it, Xiao Feng didn't seem to be struggling at all. Bearing the power of the demigod's blood mainly relied on one's bloodline, body, and cultivation. If one's bloodline was of a high rank, they would have an advantage. If one's body was strong, they would be able to resist it. Similarly, the stronger one's cultivation was, the stronger one's endurance would be. For example, if someone like Emperor Duanmu descended, they would be able to easily obtain the demigod's blood. Brat! If you know what's good for you, get lost. Mo Tianyu licked his lips and stared at Xiao Feng with evil intentions. He tried to use his strength and reputation to make Xiao Feng submit. Of course, Xiao Feng wouldn't fall for it. He ignored it, but he also maintained a certain distance from Mo Tianyu. Mo Tianyu was on one side, and he was on the other. Under the pressure of the demigod's blood, there would be a lot of resistance when he attacked. On top of that, no one knew what kind of reaction some attacks would cause from the demigod's blood. Senior Marshal Brother Mo, this Xiao brat controlled the army of the water race at the Purple Smoke Lake and forced Senior Marshal Brother 2 to retreat. One of the disciples from the Thousand Darkness Sacred Clan warned. The demigod Forgotten Garden was only so big, and some news had spread throughout the area. What? Forced Senior Marshal Brother 2 to retreat. Hearing that, Mo Tianyu's heart shook in disbelief. Before entering the demigod Forgotten Garden, his strength was slightly weaker than Tu Jusing's. However, he soon obtained fortune in the demigod Forgotten Garden, and his bloodline increased dramatically. His strength might even surpass Tu Jusing. However, even then, he was also shocked when he heard this news. Right at this moment, whoosh! A figure with 5 colored lightning wings flew through the air. What a unique power of lightning! Zhao Feng felt the wind lightning True Yuan within his body become chaotic. He could guess the identity of the newcomer without even looking. Lei Zhen. One of the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land. This is going to be interesting. Another expert has appeared among the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land. This Lei Zhen comes from the 10,000 Lightning sect, and he's the strongest amongst the younger generation of the Tao of Lightning. The geniuses all looked over. Many geniuses in the Nurturing Heart Palace were observing the situation, hoping to reap the benefits from the fight. After all, in the past, the geniuses that obtained heaven-defying fortune weren't strong, and some of them were even weaker. From this, one could see that luck played a big role in obtaining fortune. Shua! Lei Zhen flew through the air and landed near the pond. He landed around 80 to 90 yards away, which was even closer than Mo Tianyu's. Demigod's blood. This is probably the blood essence of a demigod, or else it wouldn't be able to last for so many years and still contain such power. Lei Zhen's face turned slightly red when he landed. He immediately circulated the 5-colored lightning and gave off a shocking aura like an ancient god of lightning. Demigod's blood essence. The flames in the eyes of the nearby geniuses became even stronger. A drop of blood essence contained the life force of a demigod, and it was 100 times more useful than a normal drop of blood. If I can completely absorb the power of a demigod's blood essence, even a normal sovereign's body and cultivation will increase dramatically. The potential of a king or emperor will be no problem. Everyone's heart rate sped up. The blood essence of a demigod was definitely a great medicine for becoming a king or emperor. It was even beneficial to normal mystic light realm sacred lords. Within the 10-yard forbidden zone, Mo Tianyu, Lei Zhen, and Zhao Feng slowly advanced. Among them, Zhao Feng was slightly behind the other two. No one knows what will happen when the blood essence gets close to a demigod's blood essence. Zhao Feng was extremely cautious. Once the demigod's blood essence attacked, even a true king might not be able to escape unscathed. It's that brat. Lei Zhen looked over and saw Zhao Feng out of the corner of his eye. Zhao Feng was far away from Mo Tianyu, but he was closer to Lei Zhen and was behind him. Fuck off. Lei Zhen snickered coldly. How could he leave his back to a rival genius? Bang bang bang. Lei Zhen pushed out with the backhand of his hand, and a 5-colored claw of lightning radiated an aura of destruction as it slashed toward Zhao Feng. Purple Destruction Wind Lightning Claw. Zhao Feng obviously wouldn't just stand by and watch. He waved his hand, and a claw of purple lightning condensed and clashed with the 5-colored claw of lightning. Boom! The aura of destruction swept across a radius of more than a dozen yards. Even Mo Tianyu was affected, and the evil demonic black wind around him weakened. Whoosh! Zhao Feng's figure shook slightly as a faint 5-colored lightning started to spread throughout his body. Whoosh! Zhao Feng circulated his defensive bloodline, and a layer of dark purple scales formed on his body, causing the faint 5-colored lightning to dissipate. Even so, his body still felt numb. This was because his defensive bloodline was biased towards the element of water, and water could conduct electricity. On the other hand, Lei Jin didn't even bother dodging a few wisps of destruction wind lightning that landed on his body. Ha ha ha, not bad. Lei Jin had an expression of enjoyment as he forcefully endured the wisps of destruction wind lightning. The five-colored lightning on his body flickered as he easily absorbed the power of lightning. Absorbing lightning. Zhao Feng's expression changed. He realized that his wind lightning inheritance had met its nemesis. Lei Jin had the bloodline of an ancient lightning spirit and cultivated the power of lightning. He was the #1 genius in the Tao of lightning, and he cultivated the 5-elemental 10,000 lightning technique, which was the oldest lightning cultivation technique in the Tsang Ocean. Even the Wind Lightning Emperor's talent in the Tao of lightning wasn't as good as Lei Jin's when he cultivated in the 10,000 lightning sect. He couldn't cultivate the 5-elemental 10,000 lightning technique, but he chose another path and comprehended the Tao of wind lightning that suited him. Chapter 658. Brat. With your attainments in the Wind Lightning Emperor's inheritance, you can only scratch an itch for me. Lei Jin already had victory in his grasp. He had the ancient lightning spirit bloodline, which gave him a strong resistance to lightning attacks. Combined with the 5-elemental 10,000 lightning technique, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. On the other hand, Zhao Feng's water bloodline's resistance to lightning attacks was relatively weak. Lightning Mother of the Earth. A flash of yellow lightning appeared under Lei Jin's feet and shot towards Zhao Feng like a wave of lightning. His lightning attacks are not only compatible with water, but they can also pass through the earth. Before the attack even arrived, Zhao Feng felt a numbing sensation. Purple Lightning Wind Ring. A layer of purple lightning surrounded Zhao Feng's body, and a purple destruction halo appeared under his feet as he faced Lei Jin's attack. Crackle. Boom. The two powers of lightning intertwined. Zhao Feng's lightning attacks were faster and more extreme. Lei Jin's Tao of lightning encompassed the 5 elements and was both offensive and defensive. This was especially true for the Lightning Mother of the Earth. It was as stable as Mount Tai, and its lightning had merged with the earth. Even though Lei Jin hadn't comprehended the intent of a king, his intent attacks had reached a similar level. Boom! Zhao Feng's figure shook slightly, and his feet felt numb as he once again dissolved Lei Jin's attack. Lei Jin was unharmed as he easily absorbed the lightning attacks with a pleased expression. It's my turn. Zhao Feng harumphed coldly as a wisp of scarlet aura appeared in the purple lightning in his palm. Go! Zhao Feng waved his hand, and the purple lightning turned into a beam of light that contained a wisp of scarlet lightning. Boom! 5-colored lightning surrounded Lei Jin's body and blocked the beam of wind and lightning. This time, Lei Jin didn't have it so easy. The purple lightning contained a wisp of scarlet lightning, which increased its destructive power. The scarlet wind and lightning also contained a kind of destructive flame energy and a burning power that continued to attack his body. You've comprehended a wisp of scarlet destruction wind lightning. Lei Jin's expression changed slightly. Not only did the Crimson Destruction Tempest greatly increase the destructive power of wind and lightning, but it also had a burning effect. To put it simply, after being struck by the Scarlet Destruction Tempest, the damage wouldn't stop. Instead, it would continue to burn for a period of time. 5 elements water thunder. The lightning on Lei Jin's body suddenly glowed with a deep blue light, burning away the flame power of the Scarlet Destruction Wind Thunder. All of a sudden, the two lightning Tao geniuses wore solemn expressions. Lei Jin obviously didn't expect Zhao Feng to have learned a bit of the Scarlet Destruction Wind Thunder. My Scarlet Destruction Tempest has only reached the beginner level, so I won't be able to deal with him at all. Zhao Feng's face was cold and resolute, his eyes flashing. That brat's battle prowess is not bad. He is actually able to fight against Lei Jin and is not defeated in a short period of time. The nearby geniuses from the sacred grounds exclaimed and discussed. Lei Jin's expression returned to normal as a mocking smile appeared on his face. Brat surnamed Zhao, I have yet to display the true power of my 5-elemental myriad lightning technique. Even though victory was within his grasp, Lei Zhen still felt a trace of fear in his heart. In the Wind Lightning inheritance, secret techniques like the Wings of Wind and Lightning were extremely difficult to deal with. His 5-elemental Wind Lightning technique focused on balance between offense and defense, while Zhao Feng's Wind Lightning inheritance focused on extreme speed and offense. Hee, is that so? Zhao Feng harumphed coldly as his expression darkened. Boom! Suddenly, Xiao Chen's soul trembled as a powerful will merged with heaven and earth, forming a mighty force. What? Lei Zhen's body froze as his consciousness was suppressed by the magnificent power. Half-step king intent. Magnificent power of a king. How is this possible? Even Mo Tianyu, who was on the other side, exclaimed. Boom! It was as if thunder had exploded above everyone's heads as a storm swept across the area, making their souls feel uneasy. The half-step king intent seemed to be one with heaven and earth, and the invisible power made Lei Zhen's body feel as heavy as a mountain, making him feel suffocated. This isn't just a normal half-step king intent. Lei Zhen's face was flushed red. Once he used the half-step king intent, the power of Zhao Feng's wind lightning attacks would increase dramatically. The plaza became deathly silent. Some people thought that one of the top 10 geniuses had arrived. Cold sweat appeared on Lei Zhen's forehead as his soul was completely suppressed. If it weren't for the fact that his bloodline and battle power surpassed normal half-step kings, he probably wouldn't even be able to fight back. This half-step king intent is already showing signs of forming a magnificent power. How did he do it? Could it be the illusion god wine? Mo Tianyu wiped off his cold sweat. He couldn't help but feel lucky that he didn't attack Zhao Feng earlier. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, that half-step king intent suppressed Lei Zhen's soul consciousness, and the magnificent aura suppressed Lei Zhen's body. Shua! After 3 breaths, the half-step king intent disappeared. Lei Zhen and the other geniuses couldn't help but let out a breath. Zhao Feng stood still as everyone looked at him with respect and wariness. I heard that Zhao Feng once ruled the Purple Smoke Lake, defeated 2 Jusing, and entered the Mermaid Kingdom. It looks like he might have obtained the illusion god wine and formed half-step king intent. Illusion god wine. There are kings in the Mermaid Kingdom. How did he do it? The geniuses of the sacred grounds whispered among themselves. Of course. It didn't matter what method Zhao Feng used to form half-step king intent. The most important thing was that he succeeded. On top of that, his half-step king intent was even stronger than normal. Junior Martial Brother Zhao. Half-step king intent. A few more figures entered the heart-nurturing palace. The aura of half-step king intent contained a magnificent power that could be felt from far away. These people were all disciples of the mystic True Sacred Clan. Senior Martial Brother Nan and Dong Wenjian were among them. Their eyes were filled with bewilderment, shock, and disbelief. Senior Martial Brother Dong. Zhao Feng faintly nodded his head as a response. Dong Wenjian, Senior Martial Brother Nan, and company had awkward expressions. When they first entered the Forgotten Garden, Zhao Feng didn't choose to join them and instead entered the 10,000 Treasure Tower. At that time, Senior Martial Brother Nan was extremely unhappy. However, Zhao Feng conquered the Purple Smoke Lake by himself and obtained Mermaid Tears, Illusion God Wine, and formed Half-Step King Intent. Next to the pond, Zhao Feng's Half-Step King Intent shocked everyone, and it seemed to suppress Mo Tianyu and Lei Zhen. The two exchanged glances and decided to team up against Zhao Feng. Demigod's blood. The news is indeed true. Senior Martial Brother Nan's figure flashed and he also entered the 10-foot forbidden zone. Another 10 geniuses. Senior Martial Brother Nan's strength was on par with Qin Yilin before he drank the Illusion God Wine. The temptation of the demigod's blood was too great. Some geniuses competing in the 10,000 Treasure Tower or other areas heard the news and rushed over. the situation became more and more urgent. Mo Tianyu, Lei Zhen, Senior Martial Brother Nan, and Zhao Feng were all 10 geniuses. Ta! Ta! The 4 geniuses became the main characters and slowly approached the demigod's blood. However, Lei Zhen and Senior Martial Brother Nan felt extremely tired when they were close to the 15-foot zone. Zhao Feng's face was still expressionless. However, he also acted as if it was extremely difficult. I can't be the first one. Zhao Feng's left eye locked onto the demigod's blood, and his god's spiritual eye gave him several warnings. The power contained within the demigod's blood was probably even more terrifying than he had imagined. Furthermore, even if Zhao Feng could safely approach the demigod's blood, the other 10 geniuses probably wouldn't give up so easily. Right at this moment, the aura of death in Zhao Feng's soul once again approached. Sang. A warm youth followed the crowd to the heart-healing palace and landed on a building. Demigod's blood. Wen Luo'an's heart jumped. The blood of a demigod, and the blood essence of a demigod at that. Even Master wouldn't be able to resist the temptation of the demigod's blood essence. Wen Luo'an's heartbeat sped up. As long as he could obtain the demigod's blood, his future potential might even surpass the Emperor of Death. After seeing the demigod's blood, he threw the pursuit of death to the back of his mind. The demigod's blood belongs to me. As long as I can control it, the strength of my bloodline will increase dramatically. It won't be too late to kill Zhao Feng then. Wen Luo'an soon made a decision. The demigod's blood had changed his plan. Furthermore, the most ideal situation would be to kill Zhao Feng and take his head. However, right now, the demigod's blood was his first target. Wen Luo'an is here as well. Zhao Feng was on guard and didn't dare to approach the demigod's blood. The situation became more complicated. The warm youth, Wen Luo'an, was watching from the shadows. Mo Tianyu, Lei Zhen, Senior Martial Brother Nan, and Zhao Feng all had their own plans and were on guard. On the other hand, more and more geniuses gathered in the heart-healing palace. Many geniuses arrived from all directions. Zhao Feng and company were in a deadlock near the forbidden area. Every step was extremely difficult, and they were on guard. At a certain moment, Zhao Feng's heart jumped as he sensed something. That's... The warm youth's gaze turned toward a certain direction in the sky. A breath or two later, whoosh! An ancient beast with a single horn flew over from the clouds. Flying. It could fly. Apart from some powerful flying beasts, most living beings couldn't fly in the demigod-forgotten garden. In the next instant, a king's might that could incinerate the world descended from the sky, emitting the noble aura of an ancient divine beast, and it covered half of the nurturing heart palace. Magnificent power of a king. A king-level ancient rare beast. The heart-healing palace was in chaos. Many geniuses felt their consciousness being suppressed, and it was extremely difficult for them to move. Once the magnificent power of a king landed, half of the geniuses present would spit out blood. Hee, it's better to come at the right time. A dreamy voice of a female appeared in everyone's mind. On the back of the king beast stood a girl wearing a blue dress. Her eyes were like stars, and they seemed to be in a dream. Her fine black hair was untainted by even a speck of dust, as perfect as a dream. Meng Shi. She's controlling a king's single-horned beast. The geniuses present were speechless. The lips of some of them trembled. It was extremely difficult for them to speak under the magnificent power. Within the 10-yard forbidden area, Zhao Feng, Senior Martial Brother Nan, and Lei Zhen felt like they were facing a mountain. Under the pressure of the demigod's blood and the magnificent power of a king, Senior Martial Brother Nan and Lei Zhen couldn't stand steadily. At this moment, Meng Shi, with her king-level exotic beast, had suppressed the entire crowd. Whoosh! Everyone watched as Meng Shi landed on the pond under the protection of the beast and was extremely close to the demigod's blood. Chapter 659. The one-horned beast's body was covered in a layer of violet scales, and it was surrounded by violet flames. It gave off a massive king's power as it descended above the pond. Under the protection of the magnificent power, Mengshi was less than 5 yards away from the demigod's blood essence. Near the pond in the mental healing palace, the geniuses of the sacred lands held their breaths in shock. At such a close distance, no one could stop Mengshi now that there was a beast king present. Could it be that the demigod's blood is going to fall into Mengshi's hands? Lei Zhen, senior martial brother Nan, and company looked at each other. The two geniuses also looked at Zhao Feng with questioning gazes. Zhao Feng had formed half-step king intent, so he might be able to disturb Mengshi. As for Mo Tianyu, he was also from the Thousand Darkness Sacred Clan, so he didn't fight with Mengshi. If she can easily take the demigod's blood, then there's nothing I can say. Zhao Feng's left eye locked onto Mengshi and the demigod's blood. He knew that he wouldn't be able to fight against the combination of Mengshi and the Beast King. The demigod's blood contained a terrifying divine power, and it also had its own spirituality. If the demigod's blood was just an item without any spirituality, then Zhao Feng's spatial movement would have succeeded already. Under the gazes of the other geniuses, Mengshi slowly approached the demigod's blood. A faint blush appeared on her beautiful face, and her breathing quickened. A drop of the demigod's blood essence contains such a powerful divine power. Mengshi's eyebrows furrowed, and she felt extremely tired. This was under the protection of a king's magnificent power. With every step closer, she could feel the hostility from the demigod's blood become more obvious. When the demigod's blood glittered with a golden light, and an invisible divine power spread in every direction. In this instant, sand and stone flew around the mental healing palace, and the terrifying divine power created a tornado. Bam! 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 The bodies of the geniuses near the pond were sent flying. Wah! Wah! Some of the nearby geniuses spat out blood and fell to the ground. Blood leaked out of Lei Zhen's mouth as he was pushed back several yards. Senior martial brother Nan and Mo Tianyu were pushed back. As expected. Zhao Feng stood on the spot, his figure swaying. Mengshi, who was the closest, was protected by a king's magnificent energy, but she still let out a muffled groan. Her blood surged, and her face turned red. This Mengshi's bloodline talent leans towards the soul. Her physical body isn't that strong. If it was me, I might have succeeded. Zhao Feng thought to himself. Reality proved that even normal kings couldn't easily absorb the demigod's blood. The geniuses let out sighs of relief. However, Mengshi didn't give up. She still had the highest chance of obtaining the demigod's blood. Return. With the support of her magnificent power, Mengshi waved her hand, and a mysterious suction force enveloped the demigod's blood. A layer of dreamy light enveloped the demigod's blood. Buzz! The demigod's blood was like an intelligent being that struggled. Boom! The single-horned beast let out a low roar, and the mighty power of a monarch descended. The surrounding space was seeped into and isolated by a layer of purple lightning. The two teamed up and managed to stop the demigod's blood. Buzz! Boom! The divine power of the demigod's blood swept through the air. The geniuses near the pond were once again affected, and they retreated far away. Retreat first. Zhao Feng resisted the divine power of the demigod's blood and slowly retreated. At the same time, he glanced at the warm youth on the roof out of the corner of his eye and became wary. However, when Luoan's eyes were locked onto the demigod's blood and didn't seem to pay much attention to Zhao Feng. I'll let this girl use up some of the demigod's blood's divine power. The warm youth stood with his hands behind his back. The shockwaves didn't affect him at all. At this moment in time, most of the geniuses were uneasy, and they retreated 10 yards away. For now, no one dared to fight Mengshi for the demigod's blood. At this moment, Mengshi became the only main character near the pond. Why isn't senior martial brother Nangong here? Zhao Feng thought of something and asked Dong Wenjian. Nan Gongsheng was ranked first amongst the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land. If he came personally, he might be able to fight with Meng Shi. Senior martial brother Nan Gong is still collecting the Qiankuan sword. He should have received the news by now. Dong Wenjian said. Someone from the Heart Healing Palace had already gone to the 10,000 treasure tower to inform Nan Gongsheng. Only Meng Shi was left next to the pond, trying her best to absorb the demigod's blood. She tried her best, but she only managed to get the demigod's blood a little closer. If Nan Gongsheng comes, the situation will become complicated. Meng Shi's heart tightened. Time passed by slowly. The demigod's blood was still struggling. The crowd wore nervous looks on their faces. After all, the demigod's blood was getting closer and closer to Meng Shi's hand. What method is Meng Shi using to control the king beast? Zhao Feng's figure slowly retreated. Soon. His gaze landed on the purple-scaled horn in Meng Shi's other hand that never left her hand. So that's how it is. Zhao Feng immediately understood. Without outside help, it would be hard for Meng Shi to control the king beast even if she had the bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races. However, Zhao Feng didn't understand why the purple-scaled horn was able to control the king beast in the demigod Forgotten Garden. After thinking about it, there was only one possibility: the purple-scaled horn came from the demigod Forgotten Garden, and it could be used to control one-horned beasts. Junior martial brother Zhao, you're not going to fight anymore. Dong Wenjian and brother Nan were puzzled as they saw Zhao Feng retreat further and further away. Of the geniuses present, Zhao Feng had formed half-step king intent, so he had the highest chance of disturbing Meng Shi. I'll give up on the demigod's blood for now, Zhao Feng replied. After saying that, he walked further and further away, leaving the courtyard where the pond was. Even if I manage to steal the demigod's blood, I won't be able to escape unscathed from Meng Shi, the Beast King, the Warm Youth, and the others. Zhao Feng calculated in his heart. So, his first step was to give up on the demigod's blood. He wasn't faking it. Zhao Feng really left the Heart Healing Palace. Meow meow. Zhao Feng reached out and picked up the little thieving cat. The little thieving cat hiccuped and started to act crazily at Zhao Feng. The smell of alcohol made Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrow. Eye of ice soul. Zhao Feng's left eye was like a deep blue abyss that chilled the little thieving cat's soul. Meow. The little thieving cat shuddered and sobered up. Little thieving cat, you stay in the Heart Healing Palace, Zhao Feng ordered. The little thieving cat glanced in the direction of Meng Shi and the Beast King and shook its head. It was an agile spiritual pet, so its physical strength wasn't strong. How could it withstand the pressure of the demigod's blood? A hiccup from the Beast King would probably rip off a layer of its skin. You stay here and keep watch. Zhao Feng obviously didn't have any hopes of the little thieving cat fighting for the demigod's blood. With its body, it probably wouldn't even be able to get within a few dozen yards of the demigod's blood. Meow meow. The little thieving cat finally nodded, and then its eyes began to spin, revealing a hint of craftiness as it gestured at Zhao Feng. It's good that you understand my plan. Zhao Feng paused for a moment. The little thieving cat was indeed worthy of being an old fox. It quickly saw through Zhao Feng's plan. Shua! The little thieving cat disappeared in a flash, hiding itself in a corner of the cultivating heart hall. Zhao Feng sat on the flaming horse he had tamed with 2 dragonfly men behind him. As long as an expert like Meng Shi is here, there's no point in me staying in the Heart Healing Palace. Only in the Eye of Heaven state can I possess the complete king intent. He left the Heart Healing Palace without looking back. Chapter 660. Since Meng Shi's family was the strongest, Zhao Feng temporarily gave up on fighting for the demigod's blood and retreated to the back. His Eye of Heaven had a greater advantage when he was far away. However, my space transference eye can only be activated at the most crucial moment. Only then can it have the greatest effect. Zhao Feng got further and further away from the mental healing palace. With the little thieving cat hiding in the mental healing palace, Zhao Feng could share his vision with the latter. In other words, Zhao Feng could clearly see everything that was happening in the mental healing palace. Half the time it took to make tea later, the sound of flying came from ahead, and it was accompanied by a familiar king intent. Nan Gongsheng. Zhao Feng saw the arrogant youth in black from afar. It was Nan Gongsheng. The direction that Nan Gongsheng was heading towards was the mental healing palace. Looks like there's going to be a good show. Zhao Feng was overjoyed. There was an ancient sword in Nan Gongsheng's hand that caused heaven and earth to change color wherever it passed. Qiankuan sword. Zhao Feng's expression changed, and the ice imperial spear that had merged with his bloodline started to tremble. So, Nan Gongsheng had already received the recognition of the Qiankuan sword and could use this inheritance sacred weapon. After all, his cultivation wasn't much different from a true king. Nan Gongsheng had spent a lot of time and effort to gain control of the Qiankuan sword. Otherwise, with his strength as the #1 genius of the sacred land, he could sweep through everyone. Nan Gongsheng shot through the air and glanced at Zhao Feng. He didn't say anything and headed toward the mental healing palace. A while later, a few familiar figures appeared in front of him. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao. It was Qin Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company. You're all heading to the mental healing palace, right? The competition there is very intense. Zhao Feng roughly explained the situation. After saying that, he walked in a certain direction. Qin Yilin revealed a thoughtful expression. This Zhao Feng arrived at the mental healing palace before us, but he's leaving now. They didn't understand what Zhao Feng was doing. Logically speaking, with Zhao Feng's strength, his competition for the demigod's blood should only be below Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi. Zhao Feng headed toward a certain place in the demigod Forgotten Garden. It seemed like he had given up on the demigod's blood, but in reality, most of Zhao Feng's attention was on the mental cultivation palace. Let's find a quiet place first. Zhao Feng went through the information about the demigod Forgotten Garden and combined it with what he saw with the eye of heaven. Very soon, Zhao Feng decided on a target. The library. Zhao Feng knew that there was a library in the demigod Forgotten Garden. The hidden book room was actually a small study room that a demigod used to read books when he was alive. There were some ancient books in the library, but it was said that there were no demigod inheritance cultivation techniques. The demigod had died mainly because of the god tribulation. It seemed like he didn't have enough time to prepare a complete inheritance. However, the reason why Zhao Feng chose the hidden book room was because it was quiet, and he also wanted to explore it. Some people in the true martial sacred land had once researched the demigod Forgotten Garden and felt that there might be some unknown fortune in some places. The hidden book room was one of them. It was the former study room of a demigod, but there was almost no fortune there. That was weird in itself. Just as Zhao Feng was getting closer to the demigod Forgotten Garden, the situation in the mental cultivation palace had changed. The demigod's blood belongs to me. Nan Gongsheng descended from the sky and entered the mental cultivation palace. Another surge of magnificent power appeared in the air above the pond. Shua! With a flash of silver, Nan Gongsheng arrived in front of the demigod's blood. Nan Gongsheng. Meng Shi's expression tightened as the demigod's blood was only 1 or 2 feet away from her palm. Roar! The Beast King roared, and a terrifying wave of purple lightning shot toward Nan Gongsheng. This was the attack of a king. If it weren't for the fact that the demigod Forgotten Garden suppressed space, the nearby area would have been turned upside down. Humph! The magnificent power of a king appeared on Nan Gongsheng's body, and a layer of silver light glittered around him like ripples in water. Boom! Boom! The Beast King's attack seemed to enter another dimension. Meow! The little thieving cat in the corner revealed a weird expression. The power of space. As expected of the possessor of the void spiritual body and the heavenly spiritual body, the two supreme physiques. Zhao Feng shared his senses with the little thieving cat. Boom! The two surges of magnificent power clashed above the pond, and the space in the soul started to shake. Not good. Some of the geniuses from the sacred land near the pond couldn't stand still. The shockwaves from the clash of kings could sweep across half a mile even in the demigod Forgotten Garden. The green jade under their feet started to fall off. However, every brick and tile in the demigod Forgotten Garden was different. When under the influence of a strange power, the destroyed buildings and roads would automatically repair themselves. Because, the demigod Forgotten Garden was a dimension created by the demigod. Here, the demigod intent was an omnipotent god. What kind of level is the demigod and the heavenly divine realm? Zhao Feng couldn't help but look forward to it. The owner of his left eye was a god from the ancient era, and it was definitely above the heavenly divine realm. Come! Nan Gongsheng roared as a hole suddenly appeared in one of his hands. A layer of silver light surrounded it. A strong and profound pulling force locked onto the demigod's blood. Obviously. Nan Gongsheng wanted to use a spatial technique to take the demigod's blood away. Wang! Boom! The demigod's blood had its own consciousness, and it radiated surges of divine power as it resisted the pulling force from the hole. As I thought. Zhao Feng wasn't surprised. Nan Gongsheng's talent in space and his ability to collect items was stronger than Zhao Feng's spatial movement. On top of that, Nan Gongsheng's magnificent power and cultivation were close to a king. Even though the demigod's blood was struggling, it was still approaching him. Don't even think about it. Meng Shi used the purple-scaled horn in her hand to control the Beast King and attack Nan Gongsheng. At least 50% of her energy was used to control the Beast King. Nightmare Dimension. Meng Shi's black hair blew in the wind like a waterfall. In that instant, everything within dozens of yards was covered by a layer of dreamy light. In the blink of an eye, everyone nearby was in a weird dreamy dimension. The original structure of this dimension was still the courtyard of the mental cultivation palace. However, the aura of the original dimension had changed, as if it had been replaced by the aura of another dimension. Whoosh! 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 Meng Shi's waterfall-like hair became twice as long and wrapped around Nan Gongsheng. It's this nightmare dimension again. Nan Gongsheng gritted his teeth and fell into a passive state. The abilities of others weren't affected much in the nightmare dimension. However, Meng Shi's strength would increase dramatically. Ranked 239th of the 10,000 ancient races, the Dream Monkey race. A rare soul-type bloodline that can merge the nightmare dimension into reality. The warm youth murmured to himself. One could see how terrifying this bloodline was to be able to change the power of illusions into reality. The pinnacle of illusions is to turn dreams into reality. Her bloodline seems to have touched that level. Zhao Feng's heart shook. His eye of illusion also needed to pull his opponent's mind consciousness into the illusory space he had created. As for Meng Shi, she had directly integrated the nightmare space into the real world and affected reality. In this situation, her ability could turn the impossible into the possible. For example, Meng Shi's hair was the length of a person in the real world. But in the nightmare space, he could make his hair grow several times longer, just like his imagination in a dream. Of course, the power of the nightmare dimension was limited in the real world. Near the pond, Meng Shi's strength had increased, and the surroundings were filled with a hazy light that was completely different from the other areas of the mental cultivation palace. At this moment in time, Nan Gongsheng was forced into a passive state, and the hole in his hand disappeared. Mystic spatial crack. Nan Gongsheng waved his hand, and a layer of silver light appeared in the air with a forbidden aura. Nightmare body. Meng Shi's body turned illusory in a layer of hazy dreamy light. Schwa. The mystic spatial crack that could instantly kill a half-step void god realm didn't injure Meng Shi at all. Firstly, it was her own defense, which only blocked 30% of the power. More importantly, in the nightmare space, her imagination could affect reality. If she was killed in a dream, she wouldn't die in reality. Meng Shi's nightmare dimension could merge this effect into reality and increase her defense by several times. As expected of the 10,000 ancient races bloodline. It's monstrous. If I can learn it in the nightmare dimension, it would be like cheating. Zhao Feng's heart shook. However, he knew that this unique bloodline ability was very hard to replicate. In a short amount of time. Zhao Feng didn't plan on attacking yet. Qiankuan's sword. Nan Gongsheng suddenly took out the inheritance sacred weapon. The Qiankuan sword slashed through the void, and there was a feeling of heaven and earth turning upside down. Even the nightmare space was shaken and weakened to a certain extent. This Nan Gongsheng actually got the Qiankuan sword. Even though he can only use a tiny bit of the sword's power, it's making my nightmare dimension unstable and expending a lot of energy. Meng Shi's heart shook. Nan Gongsheng was indeed worthy of being her rival. Boom! Boom! The fight between Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi shook the physical, mental, and even the nightmare dimension. The other geniuses all retreated 100 yards away. Chen Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company clicked their tongues when they arrived. Perhaps Zhao Feng's decision to leave was a wise one. Chen Yilin murmured. Unless Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi's strength was reduced by half, no one else would be able to interfere. The two geniuses entered a stalemate. It was hard to tell who would win in a short amount of time. However, at the same time, the power of the demigod's blood and the spirituality contained within it were slowly decreasing. Let's fight. If they're both at their peak state, I don't have much confidence. A warm youth stood on a roof as a mocking smile appeared on his face. An hour later, in the demigod Forgotten Garden, there was a room made of bamboo in a courtyard filled with a fragrance. When Zhao Feng stepped into the courtyard, it started to drizzle. Profound. It was as if Zhao Feng could hear the chanting and the drizzling rain intertwining with each other. However, it didn't rain outside the courtyard. Zhao Feng guessed that this was the intent of the owner of the demigod Forgotten Garden. Sitting in the room while reading a book in peace during the spring rain. This was the demigod's library. Zhao Feng stepped into the library with a hint of his childhood and respect for the demigod. Chapter 661. It was drizzling in the courtyard. Zhao Feng entered the hidden book room and felt a sense of peace in the chaotic demigod Forgotten Garden. The hidden book room was basically a small study room, but there were a few hundred books inside. Zhao Feng glanced at them, but there wasn't a single technique here. The study of dynasty fortune, the mystery of the heavens legacy race, 10,000 ancient races ranking, God tribulation chapter, Zhao Feng's eyes scanned over the ancient books. In the outside world, some of the secrets that were related to taboos or myths could be found in these books. The books here were even more detailed than the 3-star sects of the true martial sacred land. After all, some of the core information in the hidden book room wasn't open to the public. Most of the books in the hidden book room could be read, but there was a limit. Firstly, the books here couldn't be taken out. Secondly, the books in the study room could only be read at most 50 a day. It'll take at least 10 days to finish reading all the books here. Zhao Feng started to think. One had to know. The demigod Forgotten Garden was open for half a month. Who would want to spend 2/3 of their time reading books in the hidden book room? In the past, a small number of people would spend a few days reading books in the hidden book room, but apart from gaining some knowledge, they didn't gain anything. Since I can multitask, I might as well read books here. Zhao Feng made a decision. The 10,000 divine thoughts technique could allow him to multitask and pay attention to the fight for the demigod's blood at the same time. For now. In the demigod Forgotten Garden, only the demigod's blood could tempt Zhao Feng. Schwa! 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 Soon, Zhao Feng's thoughts split into three. The first would pay attention to the demigod's blood. The second would stay in the hidden book room to read books or explore the hidden book room. The third would comprehend and comprehend. There was still time in the demigod-forgotten garden to cultivate. If other geniuses knew this, what would they think? Normal geniuses would try their best to obtain fortune after entering the demigod-forgotten garden. An hour later, Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye searched every corner of the library but didn't find anything. In the study of a demigod, other than books, there was nothing more than the four treasures of the study. The materials of these items were extraordinary, but under the control of the demigod intent, they could not be destroyed or taken out. Could it be that there are really no fortuitous encounters in the library? Zhao Feng muttered in his heart. However, the books in the library were attractive to Zhao Feng. Moreover, he was multitasking. Apart from reading, he also cultivated and paid attention to the demigod's blood. Furthermore, Zhao Feng could also split his thoughts and control the two dragonflies to go to the 100-flower garden to plunder some natural treasures. The two dragonflymen's battle strength approached half-step kings, and their speed and mobility were superhuman. In this way, Zhao Feng's thoughts were divided into four parts. However, now that he had formed the will of a half-step king, and his 10,000 divine thoughts technique was close to creating hundreds of thoughts with a single thought, it wasn't difficult for him to do so. With the mentality that he wouldn't lose out, Zhao Feng started to read. Rather than reading, it was more like copying. Zhao Feng held the books in his hand and flipped through them, engraving the contents into his mind. 10,000 Ancient Races Ranking. An old book appeared in Zhao Feng's hand. The book described the thousands of races on the 10,000 Ancient Races ranking. Even the bloodline inheritances of Meng Shi and Jiang Fan were described in it. Meng Shi's bloodline came from the dream monkey race of the ancient era, and it was ranked 239th among the 10,000 ancient races. Zhao Feng couldn't help but sigh after reading about the abilities of the dream monkey race. The dream monkey race had a terrifying ability: they could enter other people's dreams and kill them. In the dreams, the power of the dream monkey race was almost invincible. However, there were many limitations to this ability. At least, not many people in the demigod-forgotten garden could fall asleep. In order to enter other people's dreams, the dream monkey race itself needed to fall asleep. Of course, the most monstrous ones were the legendary races that were ranked at the top of the 10,000 ancient races. Ranked first, the ancient race. When Zhao Feng saw the name of this race, his bloodline shook. Even his god's spiritual eye trembled. Just these three words were enough to bring a kind of pressure to the bloodline of future generations. Ancient race, the most perfect race in the world, also known as the true god race. After the Great Ancient War, they were almost extinct. The ancient race was born with the connate god-fiend body. Even when they were young, they had the body of a demigod. They only needed to reach adulthood and didn't need to cultivate to become an ancient god. Zhao Feng couldn't help but take in a cold breath after reading the introduction. The power of a demigod could be seen from the miracles and power of the demigod-forgotten garden. However, the ancient race was born with the connate god-fiend body. Even when they were young, they had the body of a demigod. Too heaven-defying. Fortunately, the ancient races have basically gone extinct. They never appeared again in the future. Zhao Feng let out a long breath. Of course, the top 10 races were either extinct or on the verge of extinction. Something worth mentioning: the Heaven's Legacy race was also ranked in the top 10 or even the top 5. Heaven's Legacy race, the most intelligent race in the fan universe. They could even be traced back to before the immemorial era. The most terrifying thing was that the Heaven's Legacy race created weapons of destruction that could destroy heaven and earth. They even created time machines. Even if this was only a rumor, it still needed to be confirmed by merchants. Looks like the Heaven's Legacy inheritance that Xian Wuheng entered wasn't simple. Zhao Feng murmured in his heart. Ranked first, the ancient race. Ranked third, the Heaven's Legacy race. Ranked seventh, the light race. Ranked eighth, the Golden Crow race. Ranked ninth, the Destruction Dragon race. Ranked 19th, the spiritual race. Zhao Feng couldn't help but sigh and feel how small he was after reading the top-ranked races. The 10,000 ancient races ranking was damaged to a certain extent, so not all the races were recorded in it. Some of the races weren't recorded in it. Not long later. After Zhao Feng finished reading the 10,000 ancient races ranking, he was filled with shock and yearning towards the desolate era. It was hard to imagine what kind of legends the races of that era had. Time slowly passed. Zhao Feng had already forgotten about the treasures in the book room and was immersed in the ocean of books. These books were about astronomy, geography, history, and culture. They didn't help one's strength. However, reading through these books, Zhao Feng learned many things and greatly broadened his horizons. So, the legendary continent zone really does exist. After passing through the Tsang Ocean and the Nanlin Ocean, I will reach the continent zone. A supreme 5-star sect has never appeared in the continent zone or the nearby Saint Land of the Spirit Zone. Zhao Feng learned an incredible secret. The Tsang Ocean and the 3 spiritual realms were just the tip of the iceberg of the fan universe. Unknowingly, Zhao Feng immersed himself in the knowledge. Of course, his other intents weren't idle either. One was used for cultivation, which was easier. Another was used to control the 2 dragonfly men to explore the 100-flower garden and search for treasures. The one with the easiest was the one with the little thieving cat. Through the little thieving cat, Zhao Feng could clearly see what was happening in the Heart Healing Palace. Half of the geniuses in the Heart Healing Palace had given up on the demigod's blood. Those that remained were all elites, and almost half of them were at the Great Origin Core realm. Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi's fight had reached a stalemate. If this was a real battle, a winner might have been decided already. However, the power of the demigod's blood made the fight for the god's blood more difficult. Even true kings would feel pressured by the demigod's blood. A day passed. Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi both had tired expressions, and their battle power had decreased. However, neither of them gave up. As long as one of them gave up, the other would have a high chance of obtaining the demigod's blood. Hee, since you haven't decided a winner yet, I'll take care of the demigod's blood. A light laugh sounded from above. Who's there? The expressions of Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi changed slightly as they instinctively raised their heads. The owner of the voice was able to easily get close to them and the demigod's blood. Shua! A bright youth floated in the air above the demigod's blood and radiated a frightening aura. Come! The warm youth reached out and reached between the 2 geniuses to take the demigod's blood. Boom! The instant the warm youth waved his hand, space started to tremble, and a blinding golden light surrounded his skin. Looking closely, the warm youth's hair and skin were covered in a layer of gold. From afar, he looked like a god of war. Don't even think about it. Meng Shi gripped the purple-scaled horn and controlled the Beast King to attack the warm youth. Open! The warm youth wasn't scared at all. He was like a golden god of war as he blocked the Beast King's attack with one palm. Boom! A terrifying wave of golden air and purple lightning swept across half of the Heart Healing Palace. The nearby geniuses exclaimed. His battle power is comparable to a king. How is that possible? Even Meng Shi was slightly dazed. Because of the soul control, she could only use 70% of the battle power of a king. However, even then, it was still too shocking. Ding! Nan Gongsheng sent out a silver streak of light. The forbidden power of the mystic spatial rend landed on the warm youth, and the sound of metal clashing could be heard. A crack appeared on the warm youth's golden skin, but there was no blood. At this moment, it was as if he had turned into an omnipotent god of war. The aura of an ancient bloodline. Jiang Fan, who was in the corner, felt his bloodline become suppressed. Ranked 98th of the 10,000 ancient races, the Heaven-Sun battle race. Shock appeared in Meng Shi's dreamy eyes for the first time. Ranked 98th of the 10,000 ancient races. This was the first time she had heard of a 10,000 ancient races bloodline that was ranked in the top 100. The top 100 of the 10,000 ancient races are all heaven-defying existences. Jiang Fan's bloodline was suppressed. His bloodline was ranked 300th of the 10,000 ancient races, which was a huge difference from the Heaven-Sun battle race. The top 100 of the 10,000 ancient races is a huge difference. The bloodline of the Heaven-Sun battle race can allow my battle power to fight against a king for a short amount of time. A faint smile of victory appeared on the warm youth's face. He had blocked Nan Gongsheng's attack head-on against the Beast King. Wen Luo'an appeared in front of the shocked gazes of the geniuses from the sacred land. Wen Luo'an's figure shook slightly, but he pressed down with one hand. Even the demigod's blood trembled under the aura of a bloodline ranked in the top 100 of the 10,000 ancient races. The warm youth's golden hand grabbed the demigod's blood. Chapter 662. Demigod Forgotten Garden, Book Storage Room, Heaven-Sun Battle Race, ranked 98th among the 10,000 ancient races. Zhao Feng was stunned by the warm youth's true strength. He had seen the 10,000 ancient races ranking before, so he obviously knew how terrifying the top 100 bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races were. At this moment most of his attention was focused on the heart-nurturing palace. The warm youth descended from the sky like a golden god of war that could fight against kings. Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi had fought for more than a day, and they were both mentally exhausted. What was even more interesting was that the demigod's blood had been exhausted by the two king geniuses, and its resistance had decreased. At this critical moment, the warm youth forcefully interfered. The mantis stalked the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. When the demigod's blood trembled as the golden hand grabbed it, and the power of the demigod's divine power swept out, but it wasn't as dominant as before. Wen Luo'an stood proudly as his skin and hair turned golden, and his body radiated a bright golden light. The bloodline aura of the 10,000 ancient races made the hearts of the geniuses in the heart-nurturing palace tremble. Come! Wen Luo'an's golden hand seemed to be made of metal as he grabbed the demigod's blood and moved closer to his interspatial ring. However, the demigod's blood had its own consciousness and started to struggle. If this blood could be taken away so easily, Zhao Feng's spatial movement and Nan Gongsheng's spatial techniques would have succeeded long ago. However, the warm youth had improved from Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi's foundation. He was barely able to control the demigod's blood, even if it was just an illusion. He tried to get the demigod's blood closer to his interspatial ring. Don't even think about it. How could Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi let him do as he pleased? Seeing this, Wen Luo'an could only block the Beast King's attack and take Nan Gongsheng's slash head-on. Boom! The clash of kings created a terrifying shockwave that swept everything within half a mile. There wasn't a single genius within 20 yards of the pond. Ding! Nan Gongsheng left a gash on Wen Luo'an's neck, but this time, some blood seeped out. Sai! The sunny youth groaned, and his entire body shone with a dazzling golden light. His wounds healed at a visible rate. The recovery speed of a bloodline ranked in the top 100 of the 10,000 ancient races was naturally outstanding. Retreat! The warm youth took Nan Gongsheng's attack head-on and flew away. If he could obtain the demigod's blood, it would be worth it even if he had to pay a price. Stay here. Just as the sunny youth flew 7 or 8 feet away, a dark silver shadow appeared beside him, accompanied by a spatial fluctuation. Universe Sword. Nan Gongsheng's figure appeared in the silver figure, and when he slashed out with the inheritance sacred sword, space started to tremble. As expected of the Holy Land's #1 genius. With the Nan Gongsheng spatial spiritual body's talent in space, he won't let Wen Luo'an escape unscathed. Zhao Feng used the little thieving cat to pay close attention to the situation. No one noticed. The blurry image of the Eye of Heaven appeared in the air above Yang Xian Palace before quickly fading away. Clang! The warm youth's golden fist landed on the universe sword, and his figure shook. The demigod's blood in his other hand almost flew out. The power of the universe sword was too terrifying. Even in Nan Gongsheng's hands, it was only able to unleash a small portion of its power. Whoosh! Before the sunny young man could steady himself, a waterfall-like strand of hair wrapped in a layer of dreamy light wrapped around his other hand. That hand was holding the demigod's blood. Whoosh! The demigod's blood struggled to fly out of the warm youth's hand. When the demigod's blood left his control and floated in the air, releasing a golden hum. Before the three king geniuses could react, the situation suddenly changed. Whoosh! The demigod's blood flew through the air, as if it couldn't endure the torture of the three king geniuses anymore. Chase! Nan Gongsheng reacted the quickest, and his figure flashed toward the direction that the demigod's blood was heading toward. The warm youth followed behind unwillingly. He was just one step away from obtaining the demigod's blood. Wen Luo'an had to admit that he had underestimated Nan Gongsheng's strength. Nan Gongsheng's battle power was comparable to a king's, and his spatial spiritual body's spatial talent was even more mysterious. Meng Shi had a beast king, so she was also comparable to a king. Three king geniuses. The geniuses in the mental healing palace could only look up at the three figures. Some geniuses followed the three king geniuses. Meow, the little thieving cat's figure flashed and disappeared into the air, chasing after the three geniuses. That's right, follow Meng Shi. Zhao Feng praised. Meng Shi sat on the beast king, and her magnificent power was extremely strong, so it was easy to lock onto her. The other geniuses that wanted the demigod's blood also followed Meng Shi. Schwa! Most of Zhao Feng's attention went back to the book room. Now that the demigod's blood had flown away, the situation between the three king geniuses would become even more complicated. Zhao Feng predicted that the fight for the demigod's blood wouldn't be settled in a short amount of time. As long as one of the three king geniuses wanted the demigod's blood, the other two would attack together. Within the book room, Zhao Feng was multitasking. While he was reading, he was also cultivating. The rule of the book room was that he could only read 50 books a day. Therefore, he would be able to finish reading 50 books a day very quickly. When Zhao Feng wanted to take the 51st book, he would face strong resistance. This way, Zhao Feng had more energy to cultivate and control the two dragonfly men. The battle power of the two dragonfly men was close to a half-step king, and they were very agile. Even if they encountered danger, they would be able to escape unscathed. Every 2 days, the two dragonfly men would return once to deliver some treasures to Zhao Feng. The rewards in the 100-flower garden are a bit better than the purple smoke lake. Zhao Feng organized the spoils of war from the two dragonfly men. The dragonfly men were a type of human, and they were similar to the mermaid race. Even if Zhao Feng didn't personally take action, the treasures that the two dragonfly men had gathered were still considerable. Scarlet Fire Lotus. Sky Ginseng, very good. Zhao Feng's eyes landed on two of the treasures, and joy appeared on his face. The value of these two treasures wasn't any lower than the purple-scaled grass. The Scarlet Fire Lotus contained the pure power of the Scarlet Fire, and it could increase one's comprehension of the power of the Scarlet Fire. The Scarlet Fire Wind Lightning that Zhao Feng was comprehending just happened to need the power of the Scarlet Fire. The Scarlet Fire Wind Lightning merged with the power of the Scarlet Fire, making it even more destructive and able to burn the opponent. The Sky Limit Ginseng was a treasure that could increase one's true yuan and transform one's body. It was extremely effective for those below the Void God realm. With this sky ginseng, my cultivation can break through to the great origin core realm. The scarlet fire lotus can increase my comprehension of the scarlet destruction wind lightning. Zhao Feng started to think. The sky ginseng used external power to increase one's cultivation, so he needed to be careful. However, Zhao Feng thought that he had already formed a crystal core and comprehended king intent, so his state of existence and body were on the same level as a king. The great origin core realm didn't have any bottlenecks for him. Thinking up to there, he decisively ate the sky ginseng. The power of the sky ginseng was extremely strong. Normal origin core realms would need to refine it into a spiritual pill or use it a few times. However, Zhao Feng didn't worry at all and ate it right away. Instantly, a dominating surge of heaven-earth yuan qi appeared within Zhao Feng's body. It was like a deep pond that continuously flowed out. If it were a normal sovereign, their body would probably explode and die. However, Zhao Feng felt a warm sensation in his body. He circulated his half-step king intent and easily controlled this surge of heaven-earth yuan energy into his crystal core. Half a day later, the power of the sky ginseng was easily stabilized by Zhao Feng. On the next day, he still multitasked, cultivating and reading at the same time. Reading was very simple. He could only read 50 books a day, so Zhao Feng soon finished them. The fight for the demigod's blood was slightly complicated. On the first day he left the heart-healing palace, the demigod's blood mysteriously disappeared. There was no helping it. The demigod's blood flew extremely fast, but it was too small. It was hidden in a corner of the demigod forgotten garden and was extremely hard to find. The three king geniuses and the geniuses of the other sacred lands obviously wouldn't give up, so they spent a lot of effort to find the demigod's blood. Although the demigod's blood had disappeared, the three king geniuses were able to track it down. The geniuses that entered the sacred land all had bloodlines, techniques, and secret techniques. They finally found the demigod's blood. Whoosh! The demigod's blood flashed through the leaves of a tree. Chase! The three king geniuses chased after him after hearing the news. This time, the demigod's blood flew for a long time before entering a terrifying graveyard. This graveyard was in the back mountain of the demigod forgotten garden, and it was dead silent. There wasn't a single living being, and only some graves could be seen. Unmarked graveyard. The geniuses of the sacred land exclaimed. Zhao Feng was also paying attention to this. The unmarked graveyard is a forbidden area of the demigod forgotten garden. The geniuses of the sacred land knew about the forbidden area of the demigod forgotten garden. Zhao Feng also knew how terrifying the unmarked graveyard was. Not many geniuses were willing to go to the unmarked graveyard. Firstly, the unmarked graveyard was extremely dangerous, and there were some powerful ghosts and vengeful spirits. Some of them were even at the king rank. Secondly, the unmarked graveyard was just a graveyard, and there weren't any treasures. This graveyard still had some power of curses in it. If one wasn't careful, they wouldn't even know how they died. Simply put, the unmarked graveyard was similar to the forbidden ground of 100 graves, but it was thousands of times more dangerous. So, the demigod's blood flew into the unmarked graveyard. Some of the geniuses of the sacred land hesitated. However, the three king geniuses didn't stop and flew in. At this moment in time, this was the 5th day since Zhao Feng had entered the hidden book room. 5 days. Zhao Feng had read half of the books in the hidden book room. On top of that, the medicinal power of the extreme heaven ginseng he had consumed had been completely absorbed, including some of the effects of the immortal spring. Early stage Great Origin Core Realm. Zhao Feng used his half-step king intent to control the true yuan within his body. The crystal core within his body had increased in size. As expected, the Great Origin Core Realm wasn't a bottleneck for Zhao Feng. As long as the quantity was enough, success would follow. Because I've already formed a crystal core, breaking through to the great origin core realm doesn't increase my strength by much. Zhao Feng murmured. On the other hand, he had high hopes for the Scarlet Fire Lotus since it could help him cultivate the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning. While cultivating, Zhao Feng was multitasking and reading a book. A book opened in his hand, and his heart jumped. 8 Great God Eyes? This book was placed in an inconspicuous corner of the library. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.